Hey, all. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining. So today we'll be having few sessions, mostly on that full stack applications as well as on Azure. So the first session will be on full stack application using Blazor WASM as well as using gRPC. Okay. So let me share my screen. We'll get going. Okay. So this is the event, guys. So a couple of speakers are lined up. First, I'm going to talk on how to create full stack application using gRPC Web and Blazor WASM. Then Ankit is going to talk on server-side Blazor WASM. Mohit is going to talk on Azure, and Prakash will speak on Azure, and Saurabh will speak on full stack using Django. So, so let's start with this. So this entire source code for today's session will be here. So I will paste it. Okay. So that will be the place for the source code. So let's start talking about this. What are we going to do this? This is the prerequisite. So we have operating system and .NET 5 Visual Studio. You can use either the community edition or the or professional or whatever the version you have. You can use that, and then we can use the Visual Studio Code also, but using Visual Studio 2019 will help, and I'll use Postman, SQL Server 2016, and I use Azure Data Studio. This is Azure Data Studio, which is the cross-platform one. It's for the database, and the prior knowledge of having knowledge on basic C Sharp, PF core, and knowledge of async await will be a good. Uh, and I've given the SQL scripts to install the database as well as the population scripts. The technology stack is this one. So I'm still a learner. Some of the points which I'm unable to answer, I'll get back to you using the YouTube or social media, whichever the media you post it. I'll get back to you on that. Okay. So what are we going to do today? So we are going to build see existing infrastructure. We have reusable code. So these are the libraries, and using which we have the REST API built. This one controller with two methods, get all and get by ID. And we'll go through that real quick and see what all the things are available. And then we'll start building the gRPC using this reusable components. And we'll test it using console application as well as using the Windows Forms application. And then we'll quickly go ahead and add the web capability into that gRPC, and then create a Blazor WASM application, and do an integration of this Blazor WASM using Web API as well as to gRPC Web, and showcasing the content length between content length and time. Okay, so how is the content length? We are retrieving the same number of records. If you see that we are retrieving this 8 records, so the content length, how it is varying, and also the time it is taking to fetch the content from Web API and from gRPC Web. So let's fasten our seat belt, and let's see this. What do we have right now? I will close that, and so I kept a couple of windows. So let me see this. So let me navigate to that .NET Learner's House, and today's one CD source and CD2. Okay, that's the path of this web API. So that's this window. I keeping it for Web API, and let me navigate to that window. For there's nothing in here, but we are going to create it. This is for the Web API. This is for the gRPC web. So I just kept some title there just for an identification. This is for the gRPC web. There's one command prompt I'm going to open that will be for the clients. So we have a couple of clients here, which is already there. So we have all these windows opened. And what do we have in this infrastructure? If you see this, we have college core, and all these are .NET, right? So all these are .NET 5. Everything is built in .NET 5. So if you see in this college core, we have common. So inside this common, if you see, we have the connection string and other constants. I moved it here, and also if you see that this is a subclass between this. Inside the same file, we have subclasses. So that way we know that why do we use this connection string to which module, or what is the functionality to which we are using this one. And we have a couple of entities. One is professor and one is student. So if you see this professor, the number of fields will exactly match with the number of fields in the database. Here, if you see this, the professor ID, name, date of join, teachers, salary, and PhD. Okay, and student. That's the thing which is there in those two folders. And the next thing we look into is this interfaces. So inside this interfaces, we have DAL, which is data access layer. So we have two methods. One is get all professors, and one is get professor by ID. And then we have iProfessor BLL, where we have again we have this get all professors and get professor by ID. Both are both methods. One we use in DAL layer and one we use in business logic layer. And what do we have in DAL? So DAL is pretty simple, where we have this DB context, and inside this DB context, we have a parameterized constructor, and we are exposing two DB sets. And inside the DB set, we are specifying the entities, and whatever are there on the right side, which should be exactly match one-on-one with these tables, professors and students. The spelling should exactly match with this. That should be on the right side. And if you see this Professor Dal, this is a data access layer, and we are implementing this interface I Professor Dal. And we have two parameters, and we have a constructor, and these two parameters are being constructor injected. And we have two methods. One is get all professor and get professor by ID. And we are implementing this one. What are we doing basically? We are using this DB context, and we are retrieving the content from the DB set. The DB set is professors. That means we are retrieving the content from this table, professors. We are saying include student because we have given that students also. So that comes in here, and then to async, and we are configuring await. One thing we can look at it is here. That's the thing. And if you see here, what we are doing is, again, we are using this DB context and going to that DB set, and where we are checking this professor ID should be equivalent to the professor ID which is coming in. And then we are including whatever the professors, those students we have it, and we are retrieving it. So if you see, there should be some records. I don't know, do I have a record or not? Select start from students. Let me check. So for first three, for some of the professors which we have, for Shiva Sai, we have this. And that's a professor ID 5E, and 99 for Matthew, and for Azim we have these records. So some of the professors has got the child record, so we are retrieving this child records. That's what is happening over here. And if you see this, the college business logic layer, again we have these two of those properties which are being constructor injected, and you can see that we are invoking the professors get professor from data access layer. Here also we are invoking this professors dot get professor by id, and we are passing in the professor id here. Okay, so that's what we are doing. These are the common components, and if you come and see what is there here in this web API, the web API we have this program.cs, and the program.cs is invoking the create host builder. And if you come and see this host builder, you can see that what is happening here. One is this high host builder. Just click on this one, and it takes us in here. You can see this one. And one more important point what we can do is, and again click here, create default builder, and expand this. You can see this, what all the things which it is doing. So what all the things which are coming by default, you can read it over here. And that is starting the startup class. And inside the startup class, what is very important is the two pieces. One is this configure service, one is this configure method. So the configure service is the one where which we load or will add all our dependencies to the service container. So here iServices collection, that's the one. You can see this. Specifies the contract for a collection of service descriptors. So we are loading all our dependencies here. If you can see that we are adding EF core, and we are adding the application services like a professor. If someone asks for an instance of iProfessor BLL, he'll get a Professor BLL instance, and someone asks for iProfessor DAL, he'll get a instance of DAL. So that's the thing. And after that, if you see that we have this app settings where we have this connection string, except that there's nothing in here. And we are not using this connection string. We'll come back once we discuss the web API, gRPC piece. And here you see this the controllers, couple of controllers. So this is a default controller. We don't need it, but I just kept it there. And the professors controller, and you can see this professors controller. Again, we have this professor bal and ilogger. And those two are constructor injected through constructor, and we are invoking the professors BLL. So if you see, controller invokes professor BLL, which invokes professor DAL, and which invokes a method on the DB context. So that's the flow. And what do we do now? We'll quickly go and validate this. So we already have the web API one. I do come in here, .NET run release. So I'm starting this web API, and let's do a quick one round of testing through the Postman. So see that what content is coming in. So you can see now I'm invoking a method. Here you can see this. It is it made a call, and it returned in 3 seconds. 3,300 milliseconds is 3 seconds. So now it took only 63 milliseconds. Okay, so there's a lot of improvement. So that's the default thing what we verified it. Now what we do is we'll follow this demo script. We gone through what do we have at this point of time, and we have validated it. So now comes the real piece where we go and build this. Now if you see this, what is the advantage of moving all the things to library? So technically these should be the NuGet packages. So what is the advantage of moving that to those libraries is, if you see, the web API piece is very lean. It doesn't have anything. It doesn't need to worry about anything except that it has to expose this controller, and it has to implement those endpoints. Except that you don't need to worry about anything, because rest of the functionality we moved it to those different libraries. Okay, and here in the startup class we need to ensure that we are properly loading those dependencies inside the service container and configuring the HTTP pipeline. So except there's nothing we need to worry about. So that's the one advantage. And the second advantage what we see today is, right now we have only web API and we are building a grpc, assuming that we already have the reusable component. See how quickly we'll be able to build it. So first thing is, what we have to do is, I've given all entire steps in this documentation. If something is missing, please feel free to reach me. You can come and comment it over here inside this, and I should be able to answer that. Right. So, or else you can post your comments directly here on inside this main page itself here. So I should be able to answer that also. Okay. Thanks. Then. So let's follow the same demo script. So we'll create a grpc project now. So I right mouse click on this and add create new project. We'll create this grpc. That's the folder. Click on create. It's .NET 5 grpc. We're not enabling the Docker support, and we are not touching anything to on the authentication piece. So that's a default template, we take it. Okay, that's one thing is done. And the next thing what I want to do is, just to save the time, I will go ahead and create the Blazor Wasm project also. So let me create this Blazor Wasm project inside this, so that we will have all the projects. So I create a new and Blazor app, and let me create this over here. And that's .NET 5. We are selecting this WebAssembly template, configure HTTPS, and rest of the things we are not touching it. So after this, what we will do is, let's ensure that we are not stepping on others' foot, in the sense we don't block those ports. So first, what we will do is, we'll come in here and verify the port. You can see this HTTPS on 5002 and non-HTTPS on 5003. And here, if you see that, here 5001, 0 and 1, 5000, 5001, and this is 5002 and 5003. So let's assume what is there in Blazor, we'll configure. So 0, 1, 2, 3 is already blocked. So let's make it as 4 and 5. Let's use these ports. So we know that this is the grpc is using 0 and 1, web api is using 2 and 3, and Blazor is using 4 and 5. So now we know that all three applications are using different ports, and okay, so that's good thing. And let's keep this aside, and we'll start working on this guy. So that's also in .NET 5. So let's follow the demo script. What should we do next? Okay, after that, what we should do is, we should add the reference of AutoMapper as well as the grpc web. So I will copy these two, and I'll copy this and I'll paste it over here. Or else I can do different ways. I can go ahead and choose that from the NuGet package also. Right mouse click on that and manage NuGet packages and browse that. Okay, I can do that. Or else I can do is, using the package manager console. I can go and use this package manager console, and I can execute this command. So there are multiple ways. This is one of the way I frequently use. Maybe that's what I love that, or I love that. Yeah. Uh, yep, sure. Uh, so So that's the thing. Um, so we'll be starting. I mean, we're just creating this grpc, and next half an hour we'll create this blazor wasm and its integration. Okay. So first I just wanted to start with this, and slowly we'll go there. Hmm? And then what we have to do is we have to add this proto file. So there are a couple of things which is there here. We have the starter files. So I've provided everything here in the starter file for you people. So it will be easy. You can follow that instructions on that uh, readme, and you can follow this. Right. So I'm dropping this college, this proto. So if you come here and you can see this, and I go to properties of this greeter, whatever is coming by default template, is able, this tool is able to recognize that, okay, this is a proto file I have to compile using podbuff. Now when I go and select this college, it's not able to recognize. So how do you solve this problem? Is one of the way to solve is you need to come in here into the solution and add one entry, like if you do so college, and afterwards if you come and check this, the greeter proto is being recognized, as well as this college dot proto is also being recognized. Okay, that's the step one. So what is this proto file? Proto file is an interface definition language, and any parties who want to talk through grpc, they have to strictly follow or adhere to this interface. Okay. And here there is something known as a service, and that's the one where which exposes, or in which we define two of those rpc methods. And each of these rpc methods can take parameters, or like void. What is void? You have this google.podbuff.empty. There's another thing called google podbuff timestamp, which is little bit different from what is timestamp in the c sharp. So you can see this professor request is being accepted, and get professor response is being returned from this method, get professor id. And get all professors is not accepting any parameter, but it is returning all professors response. If you see this all professors response, there is something known as repeated. That means this is one or more of professors response. So this is similar to collection, array, or enumerable. I'm just giving so that some different people who understand these things, they can correlate. But it is one or more elements. That's what is this repeated. So that is this one. So the next thing what we have to check is we'll compile this. Once we compile that, uh, let's wait. It is compiling. Not should be ready anytime. Okay, cool. So we have this, and one thing what we can do is we can get into this show all files, get into this obj debug .NET 5. You can see under Protos folder there is something known as a college grpc and college. There are two things. Now if you go to this college grpc and expand this, once you expand this, what you see is there you can see a class, abstract partial class called as college svc base. So where is it picking its name? So college svc is the name which you have defined in this proto. So the college dot proto, so it creates college grpccs college cs. So that's a convention. Everything comes from this file, proto file name, whatever you're given. And inside this, the service name we have given as college svc. So it creates a abstract class, and it's called as the name whatever we specify here, college service. So it comes, creates college svc base. Okay. So this has got, we have exposed two rpc methods. So all professors, get all professors, and get professor id. So this is one method, get all professors, get professor id. These two are virtual methods which we have to implement. And if you come to this college.cs, that's where you define those messages. So you have that messages are defined here. So now you know that how to handle. So we discussed what is proto, and how you can instruct the tooling to use this proto and compile it. And we have seen that where those artifacts are getting generated. Okay. So after that, the next step is we have to use secrets, user secrets. So if you, what does user secrets means? So if you come and check over here, so we have this connection strings. So let me use the same connection string over here, and I'll come to this place and use the same connection string, but we are not defining anything. If you observe that, guys, we are not defining anything over there. And one more thing what we have to do is we have to get into this, and grpc, let's mark it as debug. Okay, here also I'll mark that as debug, right? So we have instructed to split the debug information from the grpc. That's one more change we do, right? So yep. So now if you see this, we don't have any connection strings which we specified here. Also in the web API, we did not specify any connection string. But where does this connection string coming from? So that is coming from the user secrets. So if you go and click on this manage user secrets, so that's where I stored all my secrets. So this is external to the project, but we will be able to use it as long as, and these things whatever we are specifying here, this is for the DevOps team or some of our colleagues who wants to use. They should know that what all the configurations which they have to have it on their local box, so that they can use or test this applications. Okay, so now coming back here, what I'm doing is I'm using the same user secrets. That means when I right mouse click on this and click on manage user secrets, you'll see that those secrets are here. Okay, so we'll take a couple of minutes and we are almost done. We can happily test this. So the next big piece is we'll have this mapping and service. So let me take these two and drop it inside this. Let's discuss about those. And also I will take this startup CS and I'll drop it. Then we'll discuss about that. So the first thing what we will see here is we have the mapping. So mapping is the one where we need some of the dependencies. We need to bring in those dependencies of these projects, these three projects. So I added those dependencies. So those quickly will be gone. So what we are telling is from professor type, when the input comes, it will come as a professor type, because that's what DAL is returning. From that, we need to transfer. We need to convert to the Google port buff type. So that's what we are converting in using this auto mapper. So instead of we writing all these things, so that's mapping profile I've defined, and I have this only one line which I'm mapping it. And if you see this services, as we have seen that this is a college service base, and we did a detailed analysis of this, how it is getting created, how the tool gets created, how does it picks this name, where this first piece comes, and what it does. We have seen in length. Now, if you see this, the college service, it has got dependency on these three, and it is we are implementing these two methods, and exactly we are doing the same thing whatever we did it there in the web API. So this is not needed. So if you don't have the auto mapper, we have to do it manually like this. So right now we have the auto mapper, we don't need those lines. Okay, so one more small tip, guys, is if you have any dependency injection, or you can remove, yeah, you can do an alt enter and then click on the generate and select the properties which has to be injected, and click on add null check and click on OK. So the Visual Studio IDE does a very good job of creating those constructors, beautiful constructors. Okay, so that we have to implement the service, and the next thing what we have to do is uh, we have to do a service injection container. We have to load these dependencies into this container in the configure services, as well as we have to add anything into the request pipeline. What did we add? We add use grpc web as well as use cors, and see, this is how the grpc service gets exposed. So you can see this greeter service and college service, those two are there here in this class, in this folder. And when you want to expose any of the grpc as a web, you have to click on enable. So what are the two important things what you have to take care? One thing is grpc.asp.net core, you have to bring in this NuGet package, and here we have to add this use grpc, and that too it should be between the routing and endpoints. In between that you need to have that, and wherever you are adding this to the endpoints, you have to expose that. You have to add call this extension method enable grpc web. Okay, so that's the thing what you have to take care of, and I think we are almost done. So let's quickly check that, and we will take a couple of minutes time to quickly go and verify. We'll quickly go and verify that how to test this in two different ways. And before that, I just want to take one more minute of your time, because if you see this, every time you can see this iLogger and iMapper, these two are getting injected, and iProfessors BAL. So we know that this is application dependency. These are where are these dependencies coming in, how it is getting loaded. So we'll look into that in depth now. So let me put a debugger over there, and coming back to this DB context, let me put a debugger over here, and inside this DB context, let me put a debugger over here, and in this professors BLL, let me put a debugger over here. Okay, so once we click on that, I think did I miss the debugger? Yes, I missed the debugger. I have to place one debugger in the startup. That I forgot. I'm sorry for that. Okay, so let me place a debugger over here. So let's start with this. So now what happens is when the startup class, as we have seen this, the program.cs will start the startup class, and you can see this services in this container. If you go to this quick watch, if you go to the quick watch, you can see this. There are 79 dependencies, and you can, if you expand this, you can see this iLogger. So these are the dependencies which are coming out of the box, and these are the dependencies which are coming out of the box. And when I do F10, 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 and you can see this, as and when we do F10, F10, it adds more and more of these dependencies into the container. So if you go, it is 98, and you can expand this view, and you can see this. These are the out of the box dependencies. Apart from that, whatever the dependencies which we added is this imapper, the db context, and iprofessor bal and iprofessor dal. So that's about the service container. So these dependency, you load all these dependencies into the service container. So any of the classes, if they ask for any dependencies, what it does is it goes and verifies that, okay, do you have an entry with this name? If yes, it gives you an instance of that. Okay, now the next piece is, if that class has got dependency, how does it do? So if you see the coding, the controller, the the service class has got dependencies. So what are the dependencies? Like mapper and logger, we have seen that we are loading in the startup. And the next thing is iprofessor bll. So iprofessor bll has to be created. So it comes to iprofessor, again it has got logger and dal. So it goes to the dal, and again dal has got ilogger and db context. So it goes to the db context. Db context has got a parameterized constructor, but it doesn't have any dependencies in this one. So this is the first thing which will get created. So how do we know that? Let's do one round of testing using uh, one of the tool, which is a small tool. So .NET run -c release. Okay, so that's the one. So let's go and get it for Manish Agarwal. And I place it over here, and I click on Find Professor. You see this, the first thing whatever it is getting created is the DB context. Okay, once the DB context gets created, that gets injected to this one. You see this, the DB context has been fully populated in the data access layer. So the next thing is, if you come to the business logic layer, you see this data access layer has been injected, and that has got the DB context properly injected, right? So the next thing what it happens is it will come to this service layer, where in the service layer you have the business logic layer, and that has got the data access layer, that has got the DB context. So that way what happens is the entire chain has been properly given. You can see this, the Manish Agarwal's record has come. So let's go and search some other professor. Now that we have seen how does the dependency injection works, how do you load it, and how does that gets loaded into those constructor injection. So see this is coming. So that's the piece which we have seen, the a small integration between the grpc. We have seen what is protobuf file, and how does the tooling recognize protobuf file, and where are the artifacts gets generated, and we need to implement the service. And instead of using app config, we are depending on the user secrets. And how do we load the service container with all our dependencies, and how do we expose the grpc web, and we are enabling the CORS. So we did an in-depth analysis of dependency injection. We saw that as and when we add these dependencies, the number of dependencies inside the service container gets added more. So we have this one. And to make the grpc capable, web capable, we have to add this NuGet package. And two more points is, we inside this HTTP pipeline, we need to add this grpc web, and wherever we are exposing the grpc service inside the endpoints, additionally we need to add this. So that's about the grpc web. So now comes the big piece called grpc blazor. Okay, so let me stop. Okay, this is also stopped. Now the next thing what we do is we'll come and we'll work on this blazor wasm. So once that is done, we'll do a quick verification of that. So this, have a careful observation. Whatever I'm showing right now, it happens only once in a time. I mean, wherever, until unless you add new libraries, these all the entire .NET libraries, I mean all the libraries which this application depends upon, will gets downloaded to the client only for the first time. So just focus on this. We need to be a little fast. The moment it comes, we need to open the developer tools. So I'm opening the developer tools. Let me go to that network tab, and let's keep a watch on this network tab. You see this? So the, let me move this, dock it out. So you can see this, the entire libraries, the .NET libraries, they are getting downloaded. I mean, these libraries, the Blazor Wasm application depends upon these libraries. All these libraries are getting downloaded, including the .NET Blazor Wasm. Okay. So this Blazor Wasm executes this .NET code. So now if I do right mouse click and empty cache and reload, see this, those .NET libraries are not being downloaded again and again. Only it downloads only for the first time. Okay, that's one tip. And let's follow this demo script. Let's follow the demo script, and we have tested all these things. Okay, the next important thing is we need to modify this main layout and app.css. So I have given everything in the starter file. So let's come in here, and let's go to the root. So we need to do a couple of things. I will take this I'll take those two files, come in here, and go to this dub root. I will drop this here, and app.css that belongs inside this CSS folder. I'll drop it over here. And the next thing what I will do is I need to come back to the shared. I mean, it doesn't give a full visual look and feel, but we will do partially. Okay, we'll go based on the instructions, whatever we have specified. So we are updating only the main layout. So after dumping those files, after copying those files, let's quickly come and see that. I mean, the initial load, it takes a little bit of time, but you can see over here right now, there'll be a little bit of visual look and feel change. Uh, So you can see this, the band has been changed. In fact, this band will come in here and this band will come in here. We need to do some more changes. Okay, I will close this and come back, and let's follow the next instruction. After doing that, the next thing what we have to do is, at this point of time, we have only two menus. We have to change the other couple of menus. So let's do this. Let's go in here and bring in these two menu options, and let's place it over here so that the menu will change. And apart from the menu options has changed, and we have few files for the pages. So these are a couple of components, razor components. So I copy the fetch. So if you have worked in ASP.NET Web Forms, so the markup will be in .aspx file and the code behind will be .aspx.cs file. So similarly, razor components, the markup can be in razor, and the code and the C# code can be in CS. Or else you can have like this, where you have markup as well as code. So if you see this counter, so you can see this @page specifies that what is the endpoint, and here you have the HTML markup, and here you have the code. So in one razor component, you have all these things. So you can split that into two pieces. So if you see this fetch.razor, here you have the route endpoint, and here you have only the markup, and all the code that we have moved it to a C# file. So similarly, you one thing to notice is this is a lifecycle method which is initialized. Like if you see that on init in Angular, so similar to that, this is on initialized async. This is one of the lifecycle method. And the next thing what we do is we copy the web API. First, let's do a web API integration, understand it works good, then we will go. And here in this web API, what we have to focus is we have to ensure that the HTTP client by default uh, it has loaded this dependency inside the services, so you don't need to worry anything about that. So all we have to do is we will take this professors, and then we'll invoke this. So we have a dependency, so let's go and bring in that common application core project. So that's one dependency. So once that dependency is, we have added that dependency, I think it should not trouble us. Let's rebuild this. In the meanwhile, let me go and check that that we have everything. Okay, so there are a couple of other console applications which I have already created. Let me uh, load it and keep it here so that you guys will have all these files checked into the repository. You can keep this handy. So I'm adding another project. Okay, this all are 32. I just want to ensure that the version is 2.32. So all these things are ready and it looks good. Let's do one final round of compilation before we go and test the web API integration. How do the Blazor WASM go and talks to the web API? Next is we'll add the Blazor, the gRPC dependencies, and we'll do an integration with that. Okay, so we'll go step by step. So now let me go ahead and start the web API. I'm starting the web API, and let it start. Okay, it has started, and I'm starting the Blazor WASM. Now again, we have to observe one more thing here, as we have discussed. Okay, I do a Shift F11, and I'm on a network. You see this? It is actually technically it should bring those. Oh, okay, it comes when we add the gRPC dependencies, not at this point of time. That's true. Okay, so you can see this when I do, it is going and bringing in the content. Now if I go to the counter and click on this button, there is no network activity happening. And I go and click on again, there is no network activity happening. Now I do click on fetch data, you can see this, there's a network activity. That only when there is a network activity, that means you need some content from the server, that's when it goes out. Rest of the time it stays in the browser. Now see this, when I click on this web API, it goes to this, it brought the professors and it displayed. You can see that it took 2 minutes 2 seconds for 2 seconds 40 milliseconds. That we should not consider because that's a first time hit. Now if you click on this and click on that, now this is the realistic. So it took 69 milliseconds to bring in this content. So now we saw that that's the third step we have seen. So we are almost there to be ready for testing. Okay, so we have done this integration. So we tested this REST API integration. Now what it takes for the gRPC web integration. Okay, now one thing is we need to add the college.proto. So where do you go and add this college.proto? Let me minimize this, right mouse click on this, and right mouse click on this dependencies and click on add connected services. And inside this connected services, add, and next, and click on browse, where you know that it's there in web, grpc, protos, college proto. So when you are adding, be little careful. Our intention, as we have seen in this 5, we have console application and Windows application as a client. So when you are doing this, keep a watch on this piece. It's assuming that we want to expose a server from this Blazor. No, we don't want. We want this Blazor WASM to act as a client. So you need to be extra careful on that. And one more issue what I faced is when I am taking it, for some reason it was not bringing in this guy, this NuGet package. Okay, so what did I do? Is I removed that NuGet package, and then I come in here and bring these NuGet packages. Because where did I know that these are the NuGet packages? Because when we do that, the same thing, whatever we did it here, when you do it to uh, a console application, you will get those as a dependency. So I copied the dependencies and placed it here. Okay, so one more thing what we can do is, after this, right mouse click on this and manage NuGet package, and let's go and click on build. So it should go and bring all those NuGets, whatever we placed it brought all those NuGet packages. You can see this, everything got resolved, those red color. I don't know the reason why it was not recognizing that, but this was the workaround which I found it. So it's working for me. So we have that dependency. That's a step 2. And also we need to refer the college core dependency, which we already did it here. The project reference, we took the college core, that reference we have already taken that. And we already added the app settings here, and inside the app settings we are telling that what is the endpoint to reach the grpc web. And the next thing what we did is add grpc channel dependency inside the program.cs. So what does that mean? That means, as I was showing there, we have the dependencies here in the Blazor WASM in the program.cs. Okay, and let's go back to the starter file here in this program.cs. Let me copy that program.cs to our folder. So now see this, how the program.cs looks. It looks like this. Only the HTTP client has been added. Now I'm copying this. Now on top of that, if you see, apart from the HTTP client, we are adding the grpc dependency here to this services container. Okay, this iService collection. So apart from HTTP, we can bring in this one also. So we bought that. And the next step what we will follow is we have to create these two razor pages. So those are also readily available in our starter files. So let's go to this too, and let me grab that and drop into this pages folder over here. And then let's come back to Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio, and then get into these pages. See this, what is there in the grpc razor component. You have the same markup whatever we have it in the web API markup. The markup perspective, there is nothing changed except this label, either within the parentheses, whether it is a web API or whether it is a grpc. And if you see from the code perspective, all we are here in the grpc, we have to inject the channel, grpc channel, and here in the web API you will inject the http, and both are getting injected inside the program.cs. Here the grpc channel, here it is a http. So we get this dependency and we'll invoke a method. Okay, so let's do one final round of build and let's do a testing. So let me ensure that nothing is working. So web API is not running and the grpc is not running, and also the Windows Forms client, nothing is running. So we'll start one by one. Once this compilation is over, we'll do a final round of validation. Okay, everything is well. So let me go ahead and start this cd .NET run on the release mode, and I'm gonna start. So here this console is for web API and this console is for grpc and this console is for Windows Forms. We'll come back to that. Okay, so what did I do? Visual Studio got closed. Oh, I think I closed that without knowing it. Okay, just give me a moment. We're almost done. We have this both running, and in the meanwhile, let me open up and keep this. Now you see this, we have the Blazor WASM. So let me start the Blazor WASM, and we have multiple things running now. So here is this web API. Here we have the grpc. The Windows is here, but let's see. I just want to show one piece here. So here, if you go to that Shift F11 or Developer Tools, you see this. Previously, it downloaded bunch of DLLs. Now we added this grpc related DLLs, which are not there on the client. Only the difference DLLs are getting downloaded. Rest of the things, it is not downloading anything. Now, if you do an again refresh, if you see this at this point of time, let's do a right mouse click, empty cache and hard reload. You see that it's not downloading that. Only if it is not there first time it downloads, then after it doesn't download. Okay, so now let's see. We didn't do any call to web API, we didn't do any call to grpc. So now what I do is I'll come back here and click on this web API, and you see this, it's making invocation of call, and it took 2 minutes 96 milliseconds, and it bought 2 kilobytes of content. Okay, so now let's do the same thing to grpc. Now it's making a call to the grpc web, and it took 3 minutes 13 milliseconds, but the content is 839. So see this, the binary, you see the difference when you come in here. You see this is a clear text, and if you go in here, you see this is the binary content. So as it is a binary content, it will traverse a little bit faster when comparing to web API. And another important point to notice is when you come and check the debug logs, so it is telling that it is the gRPC web channel. That means the request which has come from the Blazor, it was coming from the gRPC web channel. Now let me take this Mithun Nair's record, and let me open up this, and I go and click find now. You see this, it bought that, and at this point of time you see it is coming from the grpc channel. It is not the grpc web channel as we have seen in the previous place, where it bought it like where it said that like a grpc web. This is like coming from the windows or any other non-web channel. It clearly mentions that the request was made on the grpc channel, not on the grpc web channel. Now if you compare this, again you'll see that it took 89 milliseconds, 1.9K of content. Now when I come in here, now it took 43 milliseconds, 7.88. So one thing to observe is, as we discussed, it's a high performance gRPC. There will be a little bit of benefits because it's using the HTTP2, and the content which is coming here, it is plain text. That's the reason it is little bit big in size, and here it is binary, so it is less number of bytes which will traverse over the network. And it should be fast because it uses the regular channel, it uses the http channel where the connection can be reused. But my laptop is not the ideal one to do all these things, but you have to have a dedicated server and do a thorough benchmarking, which I already did it. But this is not the correct thing whatever I did it, but I'm just letting you know that we have to do having a dedicated server hosted in some kestrel on some remote virtual machine, and thoroughly run this benchmarks with thousands of requests per second, and then verify what is web API taking and what is the number of milliseconds which gRPC is taking. So after doing a careful, thorough analysis, we have to go to production. Okay. So that's it from my side. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for uh, joining this session. Hope you guys have enjoyed something and learned something new. Hey Ankit, hey Mohit, welcome guys.
Hey Swami,
Hey.
thanks for the nice session. I don't know much about Wasm, but I think it was very interesting for me to listen to you.
Oh, thanks. So Ankit, uh, hey Prem, I think we have addressed Prem's comment, isn't it? If you don't mind, can you give me a brief intro on gRPC and laser WASM? Okay. Okay, Prem. So the brief introduction is, if you see this, okay. So one thing is we have to quickly take you to this. So if you see this gRPC frame, so this is one of the remote procedural framework, and it's on high performance. And why do we say high performance all the time? I'll explain you in a moment. And is gRPC new? No, gRPC is not new. It was existing since mid 70s. Okay, we had com, decom, and WCF, SOAP over XML, GraphQL. Lot of things are there. So if you see this gRPC Web API, uh, GraphQL. Like if you see this host number of things are there. So each has got its own use case. Now, what does that mean? Is like why do we use REST? So anywhere we want this REST CRUD operations. So this guy best suits there. Okay. Now grpc is where you have hosting these two services in two different data centers, and you want the service to service communication happen, or where you have low memory usage, or in that case, because the content is in binary and it is traversing over wire. I mean, the same number of bytes as we have seen this, the number of bytes will be reduced because it's packed into binary and traverses on HTTP2. So that's the best choice for this. And if you see GraphQL, where you have a large data set and you want to pull the data sets, so the GraphQL best suits there. And you have webhooks where something happen, you wants to talk, and you have grpc sorry signal r, where you want to send messages from server to multiple multicast. So these kind of things, like each has got its own use case. So if we are having grpc, that does not mean that web APIs we are going to bury web API. No, everything has got its own use case and it will be there for long time to go. Okay, now coming back to this, why are we telling that it is an high performance? Because uh, till now what is happening is we are having whether it is a soap or xml or a json, we are having that contract, everything we define, and it's like a loosely coupled. Now if you see this interface definition language, like you have a proto file and you have clearly defined that if you want to call this method, you have to give me this input. So that input has been clearly defined. So maybe you're using c++, java, python, whatever it is, everyone will depend on the proto file. See this, everyone will depend on the proto file. You have to define on the proto file and you have to strictly adhere to the proto file. Okay, now if you see that blazor wasm, so blazor wasm, so there is one good image I really like that, so I want to show you that image. Get started on that. No, no, not this. So if you see this one, the only difference between the blazor wasm and the blazor server, that good documentation, it is from the Microsoft's documentation. Because the server side, the blazor server side, everything executes on the server, only the html, the markup piece will come to the client side, and we don't need to have mandatory to have javascript. You can do an interrupt with the javascript, but it's there is no mandatory. But if you see the blazor wasm, blazor wasm, in that what happens is everything gets downloaded, as we have seen that every .NET DLL will get downloaded to the to this to the client browser. So that's where it gets executed. So I want to show you one picture real quick. Now if you see this overview, now you will understand what does I mean. So here you see this.
Uh,
So if it
Swami,
is
are you sharing your screen? Because can you please
ah
confirm that?
I'm sorry, I wasn't sharing that. Let me do that real quick. Here, okay, if you see this, so entire all these DLLs that gets downloaded and it gets executed on the browser, whereas the server side, everything gets executed on the server side and only the markup gets pushed and all the events gets pushed left, right and center using the signal R. And this was I was talking about the comparison previously. Okay, hope I have uh, answered, Prem. Right, thanks.
Thanks, Swami. Even if you
Yeah.
guys have any other questions, you guys can feel free to reach out to us personally. We have shared our Twitter handles, so please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to answer all your questions. Whether it's me, Swami, Ankit, or
Anyone?
anyone
Okay.
from the speakers team. So thanks a lot, Swami, for your session. It was really informative, at least for me, from the people, from the guy who doesn't work a lot on web development anymore. It's still useful because I think WebAssembly is quite revolutionary. Downloading the DLLs directly to the web browser and then calling it on there. Man, the first time I heard about the idea of running C sharp in the browser in the front end, I was like blown away. And I think that putting our logic directly in the DLL that we are used to as a C sharp developer and then putting it directly to the web browser is something that blown away my mind because I personally love C sharp, but I'm not a JavaScript guy. So this the whole concept of this web browsers putting DLLs over there and then communicating and working with those DLLs in the web browser blown away my mind. And I think your session was quite informative for me at least, and I hope it was quite informative for the audience as well.
Thanks. So who's going next? Ankit
I
or Mohit?
I will be
Okay,
going next.
right.
I
Sure. Okay. So I will.
Swami, can you please change the overview? Perfect. Can you change the overview where people can see my face as well as the screen? I don't deserve to be this big. Yes, perfect. This is perfect. Uh, so, hello everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Depends upon from wherever you are attending this session. I would like to thank Swami for organizing this session and taking care of all the hard work so that we on Saturday can learn something about technology, specifically Microsoft technologies. So thanks a lot, Swami, for doing all the hard work and also presenting a wonderful session to us. And talking about myself, my name is Mohit Chabra. I work for a company called Config Giamba as a global cloud operations lead. So I take care of all the cloud-based setups and making sure that my servers are always up and running 24 by 7, 365 days in a year. Uh, Also, I work on a site called AzureGuy.in, and my Twitter handle is Mohit underscore Techie. Apart from this, I am a Microsoft MVP for Azure. I've been about it for past 3 years, and the idea behind this is that as we as Microsoft MVPs empower people, empower engineers like you to learn about technology, and we share our knowledge, whatever little knowledge that we have, to empower you and to so that you can become better in that technology. I have been awarded with the title of MVP for Microsoft Azure. So I've been working with Azure from last 8 years, and I was one of the early adopters of Azure. So I've seen the whole shift from classic Azure to the modern ARM template Azure that it is right now, from only 10 services in the portal to hundreds and thousands of services, including third party in the portal. It has grown massively, and one of the challenges that I've seen over the years is to how to keep myself updated with all the changes that is happening, because cloud is growing rapidly. Specifically, Azure is growing massively, I would say, and it's very difficult to keep on top of it as an individual, because there was hundreds and thousands of people who are working to update it, but it's only you who wants to be updated. So I think it's very difficult to keep on top of it. But sessions like these basically helps me to understand what is the latest trend, or what is the latest updation in this world. And when I have to present on a topic, I learn it. I also update it myself, so to make sure that I'm presenting the latest things to my audience. Also, just sitting here and then attending sessions from different speakers helps me out to keep myself updated. I would again say that I'm still not on top of the tree, but it's still this is something better than what I would have done alone. So it's a saying that if you want to go far, go together. So together with all the other speakers and attending these kind of community sessions, I'm able to get on top of it. So having said that, today I'm going to share my little bit of knowledge that I have acquired over the years on 5 different Azure services that every developer needs to know about. What does this mean? This is the bold statement, I would say, but there are a lot of services in Azure that a lot of developers should know. But these are the bare minimum thing that you should definitely know about as a developer, because going forward, these are the things. If you're not working on cloud right now, if you're not familiar with Azure, you will use these services day in and day out. So at least when you're migrating to the Azure world, you should have an idea of what it looks like and what's the purpose it serves. So the idea over here is that by end of the session, at least you know what are the different offerings that Microsoft has and how you can use it. So without further ado, let me start. So there are two different types of services that I'm going to talk about today. One is the hosting provider, where you can put your code and Azure runs a code that you have written, and it will be like a hosting services that Microsoft is offering. And another is a service, which means which where we have already implemented a service and we are using. Swami talked about Signal. It's one of the idea, but I'm not going to talk about Signal, but I'm going to talk about some different services. But that Signal can be considered as a service, which is a managed service from Microsoft. I'm going to talk about storage accounts. So we have blob storage over there, which can hold some sort of images, videos, or raw binary data. So we are going to look into it, how it's different and how it's going to work out. So the first thing I want to talk about, and it's must known for every developer. Doesn't matter whether you code in C Sharp, whether you code in Java, whether you code in Python. I don't care. You need to know the service. This is called app services. This another name for it is web app. As the name suggests, web app is basically used to host web applications. So app services, I would say, is a bigger umbrella, but a lot of people confuse it with just web app. So the idea over here is app service has different kind of applications, I would say. So there's another kind of application, functions app, that I'm going to talk about next. But for now, let's talk about web apps. So web apps is basically a managed service from Microsoft where you can host your web applications. What does it mean? If you have a website, if you have a front end, if you have a SPAs, a Wasm site with Blazor, if you need a place to host that website so that people can access your website through the internet, right? You cannot run it from your local host. So the idea is that you put this website onto the web apps. Then we have another called mobile apps. The idea of mobile apps is basically the same, that you put the backend for your mobile applications over here. Then API apps, you put your API, as a name are suggesting, right? You put your APIs to over here, the web APIs over here. So I'm talk about REST API. How do we use REST API for CRUD operations? So if you have built a REST API, you can directly put it to API apps and it will work. The another one of the offering which comes under app service umbrella is the Logic app. And what is Logic app? Logic app is basically no code serverless offering from Microsoft. What does it mean? Serverless is a bigger concept I'm going to talk about in my next slide a bit. Anyhow, I'm not going to go deep into any of the offerings that I am telling you about today. Is it just a high level idea? Just to open up your mind, just to give you a high level overview of what are the possibilities that we have and what are the possibilities that I need to learn. So after the session, you will know that okay, which service is used for what purpose, and then you can dig deeper into it. I will be happy to conduct more sessions on each of the topic separately, like one topic on functions, where I will go deep and give you all the different offerings and different possibilities of functions with the demos. Uh, but if you guys need that, you have to reach back to us and tell us this is what we demand, and we will be happy to serve you on your demand. Having said that, logic apps, coming back to logic apps are basically a serverless offering. What does it mean? A server is not required. No, it doesn't mean that. We need a server, but we don't need a dedicated server to run this. Whenever there is a new trigger, what does a trigger? Trigger is something that is going to initiate a request for this logic app. uh, then the logic app will start. It can be a timer schedule that it's basically running after a few months, or you can click a button to start it, or you can have some sort of integration with a web API that makes a call to start it. There's possibilities over here, but the idea is you, for all the common tasks that you do. For example, when you have to send an email, it's a common task. When you receive an email, send it to my personal email ID. It's a common task, right? For those kind of common tasks, Microsoft has something called connectors. So they have identified it and then put it. as a connector or for other common tasks. So you can just drag and drop, connect. They can build your workflow for what you want for your business application. Yes, and without writing a single line of code. That's the beauty of Logic App, because a lot of things that we are doing is redundant. But as a app developer, we have to write this code again and again and again into different applications. The idea over here is what is common, what is and you can also build your own connectors as well. I'm not going to go deep into that, but that's also a possibility. So you can drag and drop and then build your whole workflow. So the app service is a PaaS offering, which means it's a platform as a service offering, which means the lot of chunks of the manageability has been handled by Microsoft. You only have to take care of your application and data in it. So from OS patching to high availability for scaling, everything is fully managed. But yes, you have to make sure about that you are configuring your app service accordingly. OS patching, you don't have to do anything. It will be done automatically behind the scene. You will never notice it. You will never not got to know about it. You don't have to. That's the beauty. High availability, you have to make sure that you have different instances and you have load balancers in front of your app services to make sure that it's highly available. Because and you cannot have a basic server and put thousands of user load simultaneously over there and say that okay, my server is not working, and Microsoft claimed that it has to be Mohit in a session said that the app service has provides high availability out of the box. Yet yes, it does, but you have to configure your app services or your environment accordingly. Again, scaling is something that is much needed in a web world right now, because you don't know how many users can come to your application. If you basically prepare it for like 100 users at a time and you get 1,000 users or 10,000 users. Look at Signal, for example, right? When this new privacy policy for WhatsApp came out, and Elon Musk tweeted just one word: use Signal. Boom, their revenue or the number of users growth increased massively. And if you were not running cloud, it would have been impossible basically to add more and more servers to serve those kind of requests for you. But here what you do is you do automatic scaling or manual scaling to reach out to more servers. So scaling is managed. You don't have to put your all those servers yourself, but you have to configure your web app or app services accordingly. And the one of the biggest benefit that I personally like is this Visual Studio integration. As a developer, I can directly connect to my app service. I can debug my app services right from my Visual Studio. I can have a debugging session. I can put breakpoints into my running app service as well. Those is the beauty, and I can hit those breakpoints just and debug the whole thing with my app services over there. So that's the beauty of or the kind of integration that Microsoft is providing you with app services. We have a good monitoring integrations. I'm going to talk about monitoring in the later side, so just skipping it for now. And we have different deployment slots. What does it mean? You have different environments. You can have a staging environment, or you can have a production environment. You can have queue environment, or so the idea is first you deploy it to the deployment slot, test it out with some traffic over there and see everything is working fine. If yes, then you switch over the slot from staging to production. So you minimize the risk capacity of your application to provide high availability on the system. So the idea is to minimize all this risk. You use something called deployment slots. If you are able to understood 10% of this slide, I am happy. Moving to the next slide, function app. As I told you about serverless offering from Microsoft, and I told you about serverless that there would be no servers. No, not again. There would be servers associated with it. This is one of the misconception from the name serverless. That there is a no server, but you need servers. You need servers to process any request in the world, right? You need some computing powers, and for computing you need a server. But the idea here is that you don't have to have a dedicated server. Your piece of code you will only run when it needs to be run, and then it will be out of the system. It will kept somewhere, and whenever you request it, it will just run it for that time and then come back to it again. So in we have an offering from Microsoft in serverless capability, where you can code all of your requirements, and you basically have some sort of triggers associated with it, and run those functions accordingly. So the idea is, if you want, like, whenever there is a new user, send a mail. So what does it mean? It's a new record in the database. Whenever there is a new record in a database, then pick up the values from this record and send a welcome email. So you can have a dedicated servers to it, because whenever you will get the code of picking up data from this database, we'll pick the records and then send the email to it, and then the moment it's done, it will be down. So again, if you are getting a lot of requests, so it will keep on running, and the moment the requests are gone, it will be out of the servers as well, so it will be kept aside. And you only pay for this the time that you are using, that the execution time you are using to run your code, and not having a dedicated machines sitting over there to run your code. So for the kind of application for the background processing that you might have to do, this kind of offering is quite useful and cheap. You can also run it, the function app, in a app plan, or app service plan, as they said. Mm, but I personally think it's you can use it, because if you're using web app, you app service plan can act as a family plan for you, like Airtel family plan, where all the users have to pay the same money without have to pay for everything different. All the users in the family will have to give a flat money, and it doesn't matter if one uses more resources. Like my mom calls a lot, so she uses the phone a lot. So if she is using for 10 hours and I'm only using for 1 hour, we doesn't care who's using for how much hours. We end up spending the same amount of money. That's the same idea behind the web app or the app service plans. So you can put this function app in your app service plan, or you can put this function in a consumption plan, which means that you're only paying for what you're using and when you're using it. So means if your execution time is 2 minutes, you're only paying for that 2 minutes. And it's basically used for running some background jobs, or simple jobs or worker processes. I have a small demo where I can show you. I have some code on how, for what purpose I am using. Um as I said, it's only used for the execution time, and you basically only pay for the CPU that you have used, and not having a dedicated CPU on memory for you. Coming to the third over here, the third offering over here is something called Azure Storage. Azure Storage, as the name suggests, is a storage from Microsoft, which has four different kind of storage, and it's also a pass offering. It's complicated. It's one of the most arguable services from Microsoft. Azure, that a lot of people say that it's a IaaS, and some say it's a pass offering. I would say it depends upon the kind of services you are using, and I'm not going into that debate of whether it's a pass or IaaS. But I'm going to tell you about the different offerings that the storage has. It's a managed, scalable, and a secure data storage, so you can scale it out. You can make sure that, okay, the number of queries is served. You only have to pay for the bandwidth apart from the storage if there are a lot number of queries coming to the storage account. But there are different offerings that we have to discuss on it, and they have a different use case as well. So talking about it, we have something called Blobs. Blob is binary val chopsets, and is it basically used to store your binary data? As the name suggests, it can be your images, it can be your videos files, it can be anything, it can be any files that you can think of. Uh, it you can access it with the HTTPS URL. So you get a URL, you give that URL, you can have a SAS token associated with it. What is SAS token? SAS is basically secured access control token. That means you only generate a token for a specific period of time with the specific capabilities. Like people with this token can only read the data, but they cannot edit or write something to the file. Similarly, if you give a write token, then they can change the content of it as well. So it's all totally depends on you how much control you want to give it to your users on this kind of storage or account. So, if we are going to see this in action as well in a few minutes, the other option that we have is tables. Tables is a NoSQL key value data pair. What does this means? This means that, as the name suggests, it's a table storage. So you anything that can comply in a table can go here, but it's not a relational database. That means, what does it mean? It's a complicated topic, I would say. uh, but the idea over here is that in a NoSQL you will not have a fixed schema. In a NoSQL, like one record can have 10 different properties, whereas another record can have only 5 properties, and we don't have to nullify the other properties or put some blank values over there that you might have to do in your SQL or uh, relational databases. So the idea with tables is anything that you can put inside a table can go over there, and it's a key value pair. What does key value means? Key is something that you can uniquely identify a record, and value is of course value. Uh, in the tables, we have something called partition key and row key. This the combination of this basically defines as a key. Partition, as a name suggests, is something that you can partition with, and row keys basically can be your values to identify a unique row. I know it's complicated. You are not able to understand what I'm saying. I am not showing you anything. I'm just giving you some random words on it. But to give you very small example, the idea would be that if you have some records of people living in an area, so the pin code can be a partition key, and the name can be, or name can also not be unique, right? They can be different Mohit in my vocabulary itself, right? So over there, instead of name would be one of the column for sure, but my ID number, like my passport number, can be a unique, or my Aadhaar number or my voter ID card number would be unique. So this would be the UID. But if I just have a voter ID card and I have to do a search into millions of record, then it will be like a lot. So you have to go through the whole million record to find me. And if I am the vast one, or I am like 800,000, so it has to traverse 800,000 records to get to me. But if you have partition key, you say that, okay, Mohit lives in this pin code, and this is the number. So first it will query to the pin code, right? So that is a partition. So all the records that is related to this pin code will live together in a server. So it will go to the index to it, then go to that point where all the records of specific pin codes are there. Now it has to query it from a specific subset instead of querying it through millions of record or billions of record. Like we have 1.3 billion people in India. So imagine it traversing it to a voter ID from there, right? It's going to take so much of computing power to get you the right record, right? So we designed the it in a scenario where you have a partition key and a row key acting as the primary key over here. If you're familiar with the relational word, so the combination of partition key and the row key basically serves a purpose of a primary key for you. Having said that, I hope you are able to understand a bit out of it. If not, please reach out to me. I will be happy to give you resources or answer all your queries around it. The next option over here is queues. Queues, as the name suggests, is a messaging system where the where it starts with the first in, first out. So if you have any messages, you can put it in a queue and the system will process it. What happens a lot of time is that your system is processing something and then there is a request coming up and your system is not able to assess that. So it can bounce off. Instead, what we do is we put them in queue. When the system is processing a request, the other request or the will be residing in the queue, and we'll pick up this from queue once we have done completion of your previous task. You will process it, enqueue it, and then dequeue it from the system. So then you will process the new one and then move it out of the system again. So that's the idea behind messaging protocol. If you have heard about microservice architecture, you would use queues somewhere or some point, something like this for sure. So if your company says we should go for microservice architecture, this is something that you should look into as well for sure. uh, Files, the next offering is files. What does file means? Files, as the name suggests, is used to hold your files. But what is the difference between Blob and files? Because you said that Blob is also used to hold files, and then you are saying that files is also used to hold files. But there is a difference, fundamental difference between both of them. That Blob uses HTTP protocol and files uses SMB protocol. And you will again ask, eh? What? So yes, that's the very technical answer. But from the use case, I will explain it to you. From the use case point of view, the files basically can be mounted as a drive, as your network drive into your virtual machines, into your local machines. So it can act as a shared drive across multiple people. Whereas Blob is just there to hold your objects, hold your files into a storage account. Uh, the idea is that a virtual machine can have a network drive instead of that, where you can share your files from one machine to another machine, and or just keep it at one machine as well. Depends upon your use case. You can mount this as a virtual drive into your virtual machines. Again, the storage is automatically replicated and it's backed up regularly. You don't have to worry about it. You you have to pay for the kind of replication that you basically offer. There are different offerings right now, whether you want geo replication, or you want local replication, or you want zone replication. What does it mean? Local replication will have three copies in your local data center where you're hosting, and geo replication will have three into three different regions, so it will be nine copies, but in three different regions altogether. For example, if some tsunami came, or if you have an earthquake at one place, the whole data center can be down. Of course, it's one of the rare incident that can happen, but you have to prepare yourself for for DADR scenarios like this as well. So, so the thing is that you if the whole data center in a specific location is down as well, then you can pick up your data from different location and get it up and running. That's the idea behind having a geo replication in place. But of course, if you use the service with geo application, it's going to be more expensive as compared to running it in the local machine. Uh, I mean, not local machine, the local data center in just one data center, the LRS. Uh, then we have different type of storage account as well: cold storage, hot storage, archive storage. The idea behind this is the kind of frequency that you want to use for your storage account. Whether if you think you're just going to keep the files over there and you don't need getting the higher bandwidth associated to it, you can put it in a cold storage so that you can access it sometime whenever you need it. Of course, it will be, but it will be not as much faster as compared to what we have in another often called hot storage, which means you're going to frequently access this storage account, and then you have to make sure that the bandwidth is quite fast, so you can easily and fast quickly access the files that you have in your storage account. Having said that, I'm going to jump into the next one, the SQL Azure. SQL Azure, as the name suggests, is a relational database offering from Microsoft. It's again a PaaS offering, so you don't have to manage anything. It's fully managed by Microsoft for you, and it also gives you all the capabilities of elastic scaling, or making sure that the data can be replicated into different locations. But you can access it with the APIs, and then you don't have to run something new if you have already familiar with SQL. There are few differences between SQL Azure and Azure. It's all due to the compatibility. There are few things which are not directly compatible with SQL Azure. But having said that, if you already know SQL, you don't have to learn anything new. It will be a direct migration for you. Of course, there would be few uh, things that you have to figure out, few things that you have to identify before the migration, and then when you're continuing. But it's not going to be a rocket science because you're already familiar with the whole world of SQL. So you can still run your SQL queries where stars, select stars from employees, where blah 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 blah. So those are all things that you were familiar with doing it since years. That can still work with the SQL Visual. The whole idea is that you don't have to manage your database server at all. It's Microsoft which is managing it directly for you. There are a lot more different services right now around SQL that I want to talk about, but of course we don't have enough time to go deep into it for this session. And the thing is, you can hold all your relational database inside SQL Azure. So we talked about relational database when we were talking about storage account. That in a no relational we don't have schemas, but in a relational database we need to have a schema, and then we have been running our traditional applications in SQL since eternity now. So I think I don't want to, or I don't have to go deep into it and explain you why do we use SQL, because it's out there since forever. Having said that, let me jump onto the next option, which is application inside. As we said that we have an offering from Microsoft called Application Insight, which is used for monitoring. I told you in my first slide that I'm going to talk about something. I'm going to talk about application some insight, which is used for monitoring the systems, and it is very important to, or very useful when we are doing the debugging sessions as well. So what is the idea behind it? That application insight is a one-page solution where you can see all your logs, you can see all the telemetry associated with it, and you can see on a specific duration how many failures you had, how many exceptions you basically had, and what kind of logs you're seeing. You can see your architecture map, how the calls are flowing, what happened. Like this is P- uh, one of my favorite features, right? When we started seeing exceptions, we can see the telemetry 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after that as well, to see what happened, what started the issue, so that you can dig deeper into it and then identify the issue properly or deeply as possible. So this is basically one of the offerings for sure that you definitely should look into, because application insight makes your life much more easier if you're hosting anything on Azure. Having said that, I've said it makes your life very easy if you're hosting anything on Azure, but it can work with any platform. It doesn't matter if you're hosting anything on Azure or not. It is compatible with hosting it in your local machines as well. If you're hosting it in a private data center as well, it doesn't matter if you're hosting it in AWS, GCP, all the data. It just need a local package that you have to configure, that you have to download and then set up in your application, and then from there you can just get the data out of the system to this application inside account. And how do we put it out? How do we identify it? We identify it with a thing called instrumentation key. And with this instrumentation key, idea is that it's a unique GUID identifier that identify a unique resource and in application side, so you can directly push it to that identifier. So I have spoken enough. I will take next few minutes to show you a demo, and then we are going to come back and see what are the other different possibilities that we had and we couldn't complete today. So come back and then bring Visual Studio into the picture. Give me a second, guys. I hope all of you are able to see Visual Studio onto my screen. So I have this code. I have, let me come from here. One, two, three. Uh, Let me see if I can. Over here, we have three different projects. One of them is a web project. If you see it from here, it's a web project. Another is a function project, and the third one is a model. So all the source code that I'm showing you right now is open source. I'm going to share the link with you. It's in my GitHub. Feel free to download it and then and basically play around with it. You have to you have to create your own resources too. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show this as a cookie show. So I'm going to quickly wrap you through this demo so that give you an idea of what are the possibilities and how I am using it. I'm not going to go through and then give you all details. And the sole reason behind that is that I had to book a flight urgently, so I had a flight to catch now. So I have to run and cut short this session. If I start showing you the full details, I will probably miss my flight now. So this and unfortunately this was an unplanned trip that I have, so I couldn't plan it out further. I had a proper demo for you to showcase, but unfortunately I had to cut it short for this session. But feel free to reach out to me, and I'm going to share this source code with you so that you can play around and then come back to me if you face any issues with it. Having said that, jumping directly onto the demo, I have a web application. What I have done over here is, so the idea over here is I'm hosting a web app, which for where people can upload their images, and then our function app will directly will go there, we pick up the image and then put a watermark to it, and then delete the image that is already there, the original image. So that's the idea behind it. So it's a simple web application that I have developed, but I will show you something. So I have put two connection strings over here, this default string and Azure storage connection string. Of course, you have to create your own resources in Azure. And once you have the three different things over here, this is for your secure Azure, the connection string for my storage account. Please don't take a note of the keys. You will not find these keys in the GitHub, so you have to replace here in the app settings. And third is the instrumentation key. As I told you, it's a unique identifier that is used to identify a resource in application inside repositories. So having said that, let me come back over here and show you different services. So this one is important. For this demo, I have put a connection string over here, and then I should be reading it from the app settings.json, but I just put it there and didn't remove it. It's my bad. But the idea is we use something called storage account NuGet package. So just whenever you're working with it, you will identify there is a NuGet package that you have to install in your local machine, and you take this account, and then there is something called container, and there is some so we have two containers here, but the idea of container is a container is a place where you can put your multiple drops. So I have two containers, one for upload and one for public container, where people can see the watermark image. So I have this task of adding image async, blah blah blah. But if you come here, let me start with this. So idea over here is that you can upload your image. What we are doing behind the scenes is I'm not going to teach you C sharp, basic C sharp. But the idea behind the here is we are using this upload container and then getting the reference for it, and we are then uploading the image in a async manner. This is all the part of the SDK that Azure Storage is providing you. So you just have to use these functions. What I'm doing is I'm uploading this image with these names, the IDs. The upload ID will generate upload ID. The GUID, we are generating it over here. If you can see, it's a random GUID that we are generating to uniquely identify a source. And we are putting a file name. Image path is the URI where it's storing. And then so we are creating a user hash, and then so we are getting username, got get hash to state from where this username comes. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. And then uh, we are basically putting that image there and then saving it. So similarly, what we do here is we have something called SQL Azure. We are using it for our user management. What we are doing with the SQL Azure is that we are storing all our user details in SQL Azure. I am going to go here. One second. Over here. Yeah. So if you see, I have this SQL Azure already created. I put in my details, blah blah blah, and I'm using the SQL Azure to store the uh, user management details like our registration, all those details related to a user. Then once the image is uploaded, I have this Azure function, and over here I have this image uploaded.cs. So this function name, I'm calling this function as image uploaded, and then we have different block triggers. And I told you about trigger. Trigger is something that how it's going to basically initiate that or start that function. So the blob trigger basically will run whenever there is a new upload in the blob automatically. So this bindings, if you see it over here, that will take care of it. We are passing it the input blob, and then we are saying that okay, once this is done, put this watermark image. I write marker dot write watermark. This is a function that I have created over here. So this piece of code basically writes a watermark to the image. I'm not going to go into it and then explain you how does it work to write a watermark into the image, but you will get the idea. It can be your any custom code. And over here, then we say okay, that is been processed and this been done. So over here we say sorry, delete original image. So we are saying that whenever it's another function. So we are running two different functions. One is to whenever there is a new upload in the blob, to so put a watermark to it, and then once that is done, we will run this block trigger. Here we are saying that in the watermark container, if there is a new file, whenever there is a new file, you just start this. So what we are doing in the previous one, in the watermark container, we are putting a new file with the watermark, and then whenever there is a new file in the watermark, this will trigger, because here the trigger is that there is a new file over there. So this piece of code will start running. What we are doing is we are assessing the resource, and then we are just if you see it over here, we are deleting the resource, deleting that blob, so that we are deleting the original source. So it's can be anything else. Just for this example, we have set up these two functions, and both of them are interrelated. So once when you upload a file, one will be created for running the watermark. Second would be created for deleting the original image. And this is a simple model file, which basically model project, which basically have my models for config and how does I upload image website. So having said that, I can quickly run this in the local and show it to you. It's going to take a minute before it can load. Let me pull the screen over here. So this is how it's look like. You can register. So I'm just creating a user account over here with a random email ID. Don't go ahead and put John's, but I'm just creating a random just this, and it says that password doesn't match, which is good. It matches now. Hopefully, yes, it does. So the idea is that I will basically create this record. This will go to the SQL Azure because it's a user management. We are using SQL Azure for this purposes. I can upload this image. This image will basically be stored in a container that I can show you. So I am using a tool called Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. Let me bring that to screen. So I have the storage account added here already. So the is here. All those uploaded images are going here. So we are using this blob storage as I told you, and the container is images here. So so it will start. What we have to do, we have to upload this function. We have not pushed this function online, so this function is not running right now. So we have to publish this function. I am going to skip that for just due to the time for now. But if this function is running, it's going to take the images from this folder over here, from here, and then create a watermark image over here. So that's the idea behind this application. You can have all your custom records accordingly, and all our records, all our logs basically is going to application insight over here. So I can show you application insight. Just to give you a high level idea of how does it look like. Let me log into my account. So I have to cut it short because I'm running out of time right now. If I continue for another 5 minutes, then I'm going to miss my flight for sure. So I will just give you that this is how it looks like. You can see the field request. We don't have field requests. We don't have data enough because we didn't spend much time on putting the request. But you can see all the field requests here, the availability report, the server response time, and the server request, and all that stuff. You can see the application map. How does it look like? You can have live metrics uh, coming up to your system to see that if you're trying to demo something. I didn't set it up right now, but this all. are the possibilities, or you can go to the logs at all, and then basically look into the logs deeply. There is a 5 minutes retention, so you can only see your logs after 5 minutes. And there are a lot of different options that you can basically see that how many users are using it, how many time for how many using the application, for how long they are using it, which page they are using, and all that stuff. So having said that, I have to now shut down the session. I have to finish the session with my last slide saying that there are different services apart from this that you should know about. Kubernetes is, as you might have heard, is the future. It's the present. It's every developer has should run it if they want to have a trajectory in cloud going forward. And this is a summary. We talk about app services. We talk about functions, storage account, SQL. Uh, and then we talk about application inside. If you want to access this code, it's available on this URL. Please take a note of it and download the code, and then run the code. And these are my credentials. If you have any question, please reach out to me. I will go to my credential here. Please reach out to me, and then I will be happy to answer any question that you have. With that, I would like to close my session and passing on to Ankit. Thanks everyone for listening.
Hey, Mohit, thank you so much. I really appreciate even having your flight and your travel to India. You are still able to do this. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Swami.
And yeah, really, I think you might get delayed.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for
I
joining. Yeah,
I have a
please
train
pack
to
up.
get in 30 minutes, and I have to still
Yeah,
do the packing. So thank you
Yes,
again.
yeah, yeah.
Mohit. Happy journey.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't want you to miss the flight
Yep.
and
Thanks a lot.
charge that price to Ankit, Prakash, and me. Chalo.
Okay. Good.
Thanks so much.
Thanks
Good.
everyone. Good luck everyone
Thanks.
for your session. Bye bye.
Thanks. So, guys, our next session is by Ankit. So, I will.
Hello, Swami. So, shall I start with my session now? Hello.
Oh, yeah. Please share your screen. So, we'll fix the layout and then you can start.
I am sharing my screen.
Mhm.
So, know if you can see this.
Yes, I've added. I think we are good. Let me pull myself out. It's all yours. Bye.
Okay. Okay. So, hello, everyone. My name is Ankit, and today we are going to learn how to create a full stack web application using Blazor server. So before we start, let me introduce myself. I am a full stack consultant. I am author and a speaker. I am also a Google Developer expert for Angular and a Microsoft MVP. I blog at ankisharmablogs.com, where you can read about my blogs on Microsoft technologies such as Blazor, Azure, and also UI frameworks such as Angular. So please check out my blogs at the bottom of the slide. The first question is, what is Blazor? So Blazor is a framework for building interactive client-side web application using .NET. So it allows us to create, allows us to render the HTML and CSS, and it also is supported by a wide array of browsers. And we don't have to install any extra plugin to get it run on the browser. It allows us to share server-side and client-side application logic, which is written in .NET. And also we can integrate our Blazor application with modern hosting platforms such as Docker or Azure App Services. So before we dive deep into Blazor, let us understand what is WebAssembly. So WebAssembly is a low-level assembly-like language which has a compact binary format and it can run on any modern browser. We can compile language from any other. We can compile code from any other language to WebAssembly and then directly execute it on the browser. This means we can even write a C program, a C++, C sharp, any program in any language. We can compile it to WebAssembly and then that program will run in our browser. WebAssembly is a subset of JavaScript, and it is designed to complement and run alongside JavaScript. And it is developed as a web standard, and it is supported by all the major browsers without the use of any extra plugins. However, WebAssembly is not supported by some of the older browsers such as IE11 and older version of Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox. So here are a few features of Blazor. Blazor allows us to write code in C# instead of JavaScript, and we can leverage the existing .NET ecosystem for using with the help of .NET libraries. We can also share the app logic across server and client, and we can get benefits from the .NET performance, reliabilities, and securities. So we can use Visual Studio on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, and we can also use Visual Studio Code for systems where Visual Studio is not supported. So we can also have a wide support for language, framework, and tools which are stable, feature-rich, and very easy to use. So we have something called hosting model in Blazor. So in Blazor, the Blazor component model is responsible for calculating UI changes, but we can also use different renderers to control how the UI is displayed and updated. These renderers are known as hosting models. So in Blazor, there are two hosting models supported. One is called Blazor WebAssembly, and another one is called Blazor Server. So let us first see what is Blazor WebAssembly. Blazor WebAssembly is the principal hosting model of Blazor, and it allows us to run our Blazor application client side with the help of WebAssembly. The, the Blazor app, its dependencies, and the .NET runtime are downloaded to the browser, and then the app get executed directly in the browser UI thread. The UI updates and event handling occurs within the same process. The app assets are deployed as static files to a web server or any server which is capable of serving a static file to the clients. So this means that Blazor WebAssembly runs entirely on the client side with the help of WebAssembly. There are some benefits of using WebAssembly. For first of them is that there is no .NET server side dependency. The app is fully functional after it is downloaded to the client, and we can get full utilization of client resources and client capabilities, and the work is get offloaded from server to the client, so there is no load or very less load on the server, because major work is done on the client side. An ASP.NET Core web server is not required to host the application, and serverless deployment scenarios are possible. For example, we can serve the app from any CDN. However, there are some disadvantages of the Blazor WebAssembly also. One of them is it is restricted to the capabilities of the browser. Since our application gets downloaded on the client side and we are running our application entirely in the browser, hence there is a restriction as per the capabilities of the browser. And we do not have the capable software or hardware on the client side, then we cannot run WebAssembly. For example, we cannot run a Blazor WebAssembly app in IE11 because WebAssembly support is not available for that browser. The download size is larger, as I mentioned that the .NET runtime gets downloaded, so download size is larger and the apps take longer to load. Also, currently the .NET runtime and tooling support is less mature, and there are some limitation in .NET standard support and debugging. Another hosting model that we have here is Blazor Server. So in case of Blazor Server, the application runs server side and on top of full .NET core runtime, and when user loads the application, a small JavaScript file is downloaded which establishes a real-time signal arc connection with the client. Sorry, real-time signal arc connection between client and server. And when any interaction happens on the client side, the app then transmit it back to the server using this signal arc connection. So all the heavy lifting is done by the server, and then after any event, when client send a request to the server does the processing and then again send response back to the client using the same signal arc connection. So that is why it is called Blazor Server, because we have a dependency on the server. The advantages of Blazor Server is that the download size is very small as compared to Blazor WebAssembly, because we do not have to download the .NET runtime in the client side. And this app, the Blazor Server app, takes full advantage of the server capabilities, which includes using any .NET compatible APIs. And .NET Core on server is used to run the app, so existing .NET tooling such as debugging works as expected. The app's .NET and C# code base include the app component code is not served to the client, so all the code logic stays in the server side. There are few disadvantages for using Blazor server, which includes one of the major one is higher latency. Since for every interaction there is a connection and network hop between client and server, so there is a network latency included over here. And there is no offline support because we are working on a real-time signal R connection. So if the client connection fails, the app stops working. Therefore, this is not a true single page application. Ideally, a single page application should not depend on a network connection. Once the data is downloaded to the client, it should work offline also. That is an ideal single page application. But Blazor server is not an ideal single page application framework. There is a challenge for scalability because for one server has to handle multiple clients, and also it has to handle the client state. So currently there is a limitation with that, and an ASP.NET Core server is required to serve the application. Therefore, serverless deployment scenario are not possible. So before we move ahead with our app development today we are going to create a full stack application with Blazor server. Let us understand about the prerequisites for this application. The first prerequisite is that we have to install Visual Studio 2019 with ASP.NET and web development workload. So when you are installing the Visual Studio 2019, it will ask you to choose all the workloads. So please make sure you have installed ASP.NET and web development workload. We have to install .NET 5 SDK and SQL Server because we are using SQL Server as our primary database. Another prerequisite is that we will be using two NuGet packages. One will be Microsoft.Entity Framework Core.SQL Server, and another one is Microsoft Entity Framework Core.Tools. Since we are using Entity Framework Core as our ORM, therefore we will be needing these two NuGet packages. So I will be explaining how we can install this NuGet package and how we can use this NuGet package in detail. So it's time for the code. So let's see. But before showing you the code, I want to show you the application which we are going to build today so that you can have a better understanding. So here is the code. Now here is the application. So this is the employee management system. And this is the fetch employee page. When I come to this page, we can see all the employee data is shown on the page. Here you can see the data in a tabular manner. We have an add employee button. If you click on this add employee button, you will be navigated to an add employee page. You can see the URL. Here in the URL, the route is employee/edit. So this form has all the client side validation. So if I click on save, it will say that fields are required. So I need to fill data. So let me add a data here. Let's say Swami. Save. I have added the data, and you can see the data is added over here. We have the option to search the employee also. So let me search employee with Swami, and you can see the search will work as I type. If I type any extra character, it will not show any data, and when I delete, it will show the data. Similar to add, we have the edit functionality also. If I click on the edit functionality, I will be redirected to the same form which we have used for adding the employee, but this time the URL is different. Here you can see it has employee/edit/2. 2 is the employee ID. It will show all the data pre-populated. You can change any data as per your choice. For example, let's change city from Chennai to Hyderabad and click on save. You can see the city is updated over here. And similarly, we have a delete. If I click on delete, it will ask for a confirmation if you want to delete this employee. If I click on yes, the data will be deleted. So we are going to build this application. So let's start. So we will be creating our Blazor server project. So to create a Blazor server project, open Visual Studio in your machine and search for the Blazor template. Once you search for the Blazor template, put the name of your project and then again select Blazor server and click create. But since creating a new application will take some time, so I have already created the application and we will be using the same code here. Also, you can look at these two NuGet packages which we have discussed: Microsoft Entity Framework Core.SQL Server and Microsoft Entity Framework Core.Tools. So to use that, you can copy the command here in the Package Manager tab. Then go to your application, click on Tools, then click on NuGet Package Manager console, and run the command in this console over here. Since I have already installed, so I'm not going to run it again, but this is the place where we will run all the commands. So after we have installed both the NuGet packages, let's go to the database. So here is my database. I am using SQL Server, and I have created two tables. One is called the employee table, another one is called the cities table. So let's run this and see what we are seeing. So in the employees table, we already have one data, and in the city table, there are 5 city names shown over here. So we are using this city table to populate the drop down field in add and edit form, which we have seen in the UI. So that drop down where we have to select the city name comes from our database. It is not hard coded on the UI. So if I add any new record of city in this table in future, the data will get updated in real time. So that is how this database is structured. And we will be running we will be using entity framework code DB first approach. So I have already created the tables. Now I am using this table and I will scaffold the model class. So there is a command. I will copy this command and I will run this command again in my package manager console. Here you can see the command says scaffold DB context, and it has my connection string over here, and then it will put the name of the NuGet package, and then output directory, the name of output directory models, tables, which tables I have to use, the name of table, employee, and cities. So right now you can see in the solution explorer there is no models folder. So when I run this command, a new models folder will be created, which will contain 3 files. The one file will be the employee class, another one will be the cities class, and the third one will be my DB context class. So let it finish, and then you can see the models folder over here. Now let's go to the DB context class first. In the DB context class, you can see there is a warning over here. It says that to protect potentially sensitive information, move your connection string out of source code. So for that, we are going to remove this connection string information from DB context, and we are going to move this to a startup.cs file. So I have already written the code over here. Let me uncomment this, and we will add the reference for the DB context class over here. And here you can see it says that option.use SQL server, since my database is SQL server, and then I have passed the connection string information over here. So that is how we have injected our connection string in our application in the startup.cs file. Now the next step is to go to the employee class. In the employee class, you can see all the properties are listed over here. If you remember, we have shown that the forms in the UI are having all the required field validation messages. So we are going to configure it right here. So we will be using data annotations for that. So I will be writing required data annotation for all the properties, and I will import the system.componentModel.data annotation class also. Let me write it for all the properties. Okay, so we have mark all the field as required. So whenever we will create a form on the UI, it will refer to this model definition, and then it will check if all the fields are required or not. So that is how it is going to work. And also at the same time, we'll be creating an interface, because we will be using a repository pattern. So we'll be creating an interface for that. So let me put the code over here. Let me add all the imports. So here we have defined few methods for our interface. So I will explain this method as soon as I will be starting with my data access layer. In the data access layer, I will be inheriting my interface, and then I will start with the method definition, method implementation. So first, let me add the constructor here. And here I am using the dependency injection to inject my DB context class in my data access layer. And now there is a method get all. So what it is doing, so there is called get all employees method. This method will fetch the list of employees from my database. It will fetch the list of all the employees from database. So we are getting the data from the employees table, and then we are returning it as a list. Similarly, we have an add method. The add method will add a new employee data to our data list, to our database. It will accept a parameter of type employee. Then we have the update method. The update method will fetch the employee data, and then it will update the corresponding employee data in our database in the employee table. Then we have method get by ID. This method will fetch the employee data as per the ID we will supply to it. So if you see, we have shown an edit form. So this method will be called whenever we call the edit form, because we need the data to be fetched for one particular employee. Then we have method for delete. So it is self-explanatory. It will delete the data, employee data as per the ID passed to it. And then we have a method to get the city data. So we have to populate a drop-down field on the UI from this table. That is why we have a separate method which will fetch the list of all the data. Sorry, it will fetch the list of all the cities from the cities table. So this finishes my data access layer. Now we'll move to the data folder, and here we have a service layer. So this service layer will talk to my UI, and then it will call our database data access layer to perform all the data related functions. So let me add the constructor first here, and here I have injected my interface. Again, I am using this is a standard procedure for the repository pattern. And then we have a get method. So this get method will be called, this get employee list method will be called from the UI, from my Blazor UI, and then it will internally call the get all employees method from data access layer and then return the result. So we have designed all the service method in a similar manner. So here we have a create method. So create method will fetch, will accept a parameter of type employee, and then it will add the data to our database. Similarly, we have details method. It will accept the parameter as ID, employee ID, and it will call get employee data method from the data access layer, and it will return the employee data. Then we have edit method, we have a delete method, and finally we have a get cities method. It will go here. So all these methods are getting called from the UI, and then internally it will call the data access layer and return the result. So that is how our server part of the code is developed. Now, before moving to the UI part, there is one thing remaining. We'll go to a startup.cs file, and we have to make sure that our service, which we have developed, created here, employee service, is available to be accessed by the our UI or our UI. So for that, we have to define the service lifetime in our startup.cs file. So here we have added the transient lifetime for our employee service, and then we have added a scope lifetime for our employee service. So these are the standard these are the standard DI lifetime services defined by the Blazor. So add a scope means the service lifetime will be scoped for one particular session only, and add transient defines that the it will be on per user basis. So that is how the service lifetime will be defined. So since we have to do since in server side there is a connection between client and server, and one server has to maintain multiple clients, therefore it is always advisable to use add a scope for our service, so that it will be easy to maintain on per client basis. Once our service is configured over here, we'll move to our UI part. So let me go to the pages folder over here. In the pages folder, you can see that, let me close these folders. In the pages folder, we will define our Blazor components. So I have added two components. One is called add edit employee.razor. Another one is called employee data.razor. Along with this razor file, there is a CS file also. So what we will do, we will write all our HTML or UI part in the .razor file, and we will write all our logic part in our class file. So how to create this file? So click on pages, click on add, and then click on razor component, and now give the name. So for example, I will write demo demo.razor. So once you click on demo.razor, it will add a razor component over here. And to add a class file, just right click again, click on add class, and use the same name again, demo.razor.cs, and it will automatically add both the files over here. So that is how this component is created. Let me delete this, and then we'll move to our employee data.razor.cs. In this in this component, we have injected the employee service, and then we have also created a property of type employee list, which will hold the data which is coming from the backend. Then we have a property to hold the search data, and then we have also created a new property to hold the single employee data. So let's see how we are going to use that. So first we will call the onInitialized method. So onInitialize async is a life cycle hook method of Blazor. It will be called when a Blazor component is initialized. So as soon as the Blazor component is initialized, we are calling the getEmployee method. This getEmployee method will do a service call to our getEmployee list method, and it will return the data. So, and we will store this data in employee list method. Similarly, we'll have a filter employee method. So this filter employee method is used to filter the data. So here we have defined a search string. If you look at this property, we have a search string property. So based on the search string property, it will check if the search string exists in our employee list or not, and we are using link you to do the search operation over here. Then we have a delete method. So we have two methods. One is for delete confirm. So as soon as I click on the delete button, it will first ask for a confirmation. And once while calling the delete confirm, it will get the data from employee list, and it will show the details on the UI that you are going to delete this particular employee. Please confirm. Once I click on yes in that particular dialog box, this delete employee method will be called, and it will call the delete method from employee service and delete the employee record. Now let's go to the HTML part, and here we will add few things. First, the first line in the code, line number 1, here you can see, here we have defined the route for the page. So this says that when I write fetch employee in the URL bar, we will be redirected to this particular component. And in the second line, we are inheriting employee data model. This employee data model is our class, which we have defined here in employee data.razor.cs file. So this will allow this, why this inherit employee data model is required. This is required because we have defined all our methods in this class, and we are going to use it in another file. So to access these methods, we have to inherit this class in our razor file. Then only we will be able to access those methods. That is why we have put this line. Now we are going to add a search button over here. Now here you can see that we have defined a anchor link. It will go to employee/edit link. Currently the employee/edit link is not available. We are going to add it in a few minutes, and it has add employee button. So when you click on add employee, it will navigate to employee/add. Now the interesting part is the search box. So here is a search box, and here we have called filter employee on key up. So that's how the search is working as we type. So on key up, the filter employee method is called, and it will search, and we have bind a search string data to the value in the input string, and it will search as you type. So as you type, the value in search string will get updated, and on key up, filter employee will be called, and the search will be performed, and it will filter the data. Finally, we are going to add a table. In this table, we'll first check if the employee list is not null or not. If employee list is null, we'll show a loading message. If it is not null, we are going to show the data in a table, as we have seen in the demo. For each table, for each row in table, there are two buttons. One is for edit and another one is for delete. In case of edit, it will be navigating to employee/edit/employee ID. This particular component is still not created. We are going to create it in a few minutes. And this second button, delete, will open a model showing that is called delete employee model. and we have created this model over here. So we are using bootstrap model for this purpose. Here you can see the id of model here is same as the data target property which we have defined over here. Data target delete employee model id is same. So it will open this model. This model will ask for a confirmation that do you want to delete this employee, and it will show the employee record in a tabular manner. And also it has a two button, yes and no. If I click on yes, it will call the delete employee method from employee data.razor.cs file, which is defined over here, and it will pass the employee id, and hence the delete operation is performed. So that is how the employee data component is structured. Let us move to another component, that is add edit employees model. So why the name is like this, add edit employee model? The name is like this because we are using the same component for both add and edit functionality. So here we have injected the employee service, and along with employee service we have injected another service that is called navigation manager. So this navigation manager service is provided by the Blazor framework, and it allows us to navigate from one component to another component. Along with that, we also have a parameter which is employee ID, and this parameter is calling this component will accept a parameter called employee ID, and which will we see how we are going to use that. So to show any parameter, any component, we have to use this annotation that is called parameter, and then we have to define the type of parameter. So in this case, we are accepting the employee ID as parameter, and it is of type integer. So again, we will be adding the on initialized async method. So in case of on initialize async, we will be calling get city list method, which will call get cities method from our employee service. And this is done so that the drop down which we are going to show in our form should be available to use as the component is initialized. That is why we will fetch the list of cities as the component is initialized. Similarly, we have something called there is another lifecycle event that is called on parameter set async. This lifecycle event is called when the parameter is set. So whenever we pass the data for this parameter, this lifecycle event is called. So in this case, we will see if employee ID is not 0, which means that the we are calling an edit service and we are passing an employee ID in the URL. At that point of time, we'll set the title of the form to edit, and then we'll get the employee details as per the employee ID, and we'll use this employee property to hold the data. Then we have a save method over here. This save method is called when we submit the form, and in the same save method we are doing two tasks. One task is for edit, another is for create. So we will check if the employee ID is not null. This means this is an edit operation because we are already supplying an employee ID. So we'll call the edit service, we'll do an edit service call, else we will do a create call, because if employee ID is not set, this means this is a new employee data. Therefore we'll call a edit call, we'll call a create call in that case. And then we have a cancel method which we have defined over here. So this cancel method will navigate us back to the home page, that is the fetch employee page. So if you remember, we have defined this route for our employee data component over here. So that is how we are using navigation manager. So navigation manager provides us a navigate to method which takes the route, and it will allow us to navigate to that particular route. Now we'll go to the HTML part. Let me add some static content over here. Again, let us look at line number 1. So line number 1 is our employee slash add route. So if you remember, in our employee data.razor, we have added a button, an anchor link, which allows us to navigate to this route, that is employee slash edit. And here we have defined that particular route. Along with that, we have defined another route for this page. If you see, it says employee slash edit, and also it takes one parameter that is called employee ID. So this is how this particular parameter employee ID is set, and of type int, which we have defined over here. The default type is a string. So if you are using a string parameter, you do not have to use this type. You do not have to specify the type, but in this case it is int, therefore we have to specify the type. So this value will get bind to this particular property, and then when we do an edit call, This will be called from this button click, which we have seen over here, employee slash edit slash employee ID. So here I am passing the employee ID on clicking of the edit button. So it will navigate to this particular component and it will bind the employee ID parameter. And again, we are inheriting the add employee model so that we can use the methods defined in this class. And finally, we'll add our form. So to define form, to define a form in Blazor, we have to use edit form component, which is defined by the Blazor framework, and we have to define the model name. So in this case, the model name is a property that is called imp. We have defined. So if you go over here, you can see we have defined a property, a new employee of which with the name imp, and then we have defined a specified to model, and there is a method called on valid submit. So this method will be invoked when the form validation is successful, and it will call the save employee method. To use data annotation validator, we have to use data annotations validator tag over here, and this will bind to our models folder in employee class. So here, if you let us understand this in a more detailed manner. So when I bind the model, it will check for the type of model. So type of model is employee. Now it will see this employee model is defined in employee.cs file over here, and it says that there are few fields which are required. So that is how this data annotation will take reference whenever it is doing the validation for the UI. And then again, we have defined the HTML code to set up the form. Here we have defined input text and binding the value to the name, and then we have defined a validation message for the name. So this validation message component will show the validation message for the name. And right now the default value of this right now the default message will be field name is required, since we are using the required property. So similar to required over here in the employee.cs, you can use other fields also, such as regular expression or minimum length, maximum length. So if you are familiar with the MVC architecture, you know, in ASP.NET MVC we have used this. We had used this data annotations, and you can use all those data annotations property here, and then it will be directly bind to your form. Now we have defined a drop down list for gender, and we have defined two property, male and female. The interesting part is this city drop down. Here you can see that in this drop down, the first option is static, which is called select city, which we have defined. And for other options, we are iterating through the city list property, and then we'll define the city name as our option value. So if you go to our edit employee razor.cs file, in the on initialize async, we'll call get city list, and it will populate the city list property. And as soon as the component is initialized, this will be populated, and while binding the data to the UI, it will iterate through that city list property, and it will bind the data in our drop down list. And at the bottom we have two button. One is save and cancel. Save button is of type submit. That is very, very important. So type submit means it will submit the form. So once the form is submit, this method will be called. If there are any client side validations issue, then this method will be not called, because it's on valid submit. So if all validation pass, then on valid submit method will property will be invoked, and it will call save employee method. And then save employee method will do the add or edit as per the logic which we have written over here. And the cancel button, as suggested, that it will cancel, it will go back to the previous page. The point to note here is that cancel button is not of type submit. If we make cancel button also as type submit, then it will also invoke the form. So please make sure that there should be only one button of type submit whenever you are defining a form, so that the on valid submit method will be called only once. So this completes our application. Let's run this and see if it is working perfectly or not. So it is loading, and we'll go to fetch employee link, and here you can see the home page, add employee. So let me add a new employee. Let's say Prakash. Add a gender, designation manager, select city Hyderabad, click on save. So the data will be saved. And if you go to database, run this command, you can see that the Ankit and Prakash, both employees, added. Again, go to add employee, click on save. You can see all the required field validation over here. Similarly, we have the search functionality. Prakash, if I add some random value, it will not work. If I delete, it will show all the data. We have edit. So we'll change this value. We'll change the name and click on save. Data will be updated. And if I click on delete, it will ask for a confirmation. If I click on yes, the data will be removed from over here. So that is how our application will work. As this, that is how we can create a full stack application using server side Blazor. So before closing, I want you to make a note of these resources. So here is the GitHub link for the code which we have shared over here. And also you can look at my personal blog, that is ankitsharmablogs.com, to see more articles on Microsoft technology and UI technologies. And also you can refer to blazor.net, which is the official documentation for Blazor. So that is all from my end. Thank you all for joining, and over to you, Swami.
Hey Ankit, thank you so much. It was a really wonderful session, and I think we need to. Hello, Prakash.
Hello.
Hey Prakash. Hi Ankit. It was really wonderful session,
Yeah,
and looking forward to learn Azure Compute thing from Prakash Saab. So
Yeah.
Prakash, if you don't mind, could you please share your screen?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So guys, let me know once you can see my machine.
not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. Did I some wait? Oh yeah. Share audio course. Yeah.
You need to share your entire screen.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Now it should come.
Yeah, it is coming at the stream. Okay, so it's all yours. I
Yeah.
will get myself out of this. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Swami. So guys, let's get started with a session about Azure Compute. So welcome to you all for this. Okay, so this is a little bit about me. Who am I? What I do? Okay, so of course you can read this. I'm available on this Twitter, so in case you have any questions, you can tweet me, and I generally reply soon on that. So that is something you can note down in case you want to kind of chat later post the session. So okay, so what we are going to do today? So we'll quickly talk about what is cloud computing in very high level, and high level about cloud services, and then we'll go in detail about compute. That is the main agenda of today, and then we'll have a different scenario on how we can determine that a compute platform or compute service A is right for you or B is right for you. So we have a good I would say we'll be going through the good kind of flow chart to help you determine that how you can take a decision on some of these things. Okay, and then in the last we'll have demo on one of the compute service called VM and how you can create it. Okay, so let's get started, and of course there will be some opportunity for any question answer also in the end. Cloud computing, right? This is the main thing. Of course, basically, I think most of you hopefully understand it that why it is important, right? Some point I'll touch upon is the main benefit is of course cost, because that is a prevailing feature or enabler why business are kind of moving more and more businesses moving towards cloud. The main reason is of course they are need to pay upfront. That is called like capex, right? So capital expenditure is something they can avoid. They can just pay for the use they make. So that is way economical than setting up themselves. So that is a primary reason. Basically, of course, there are a bunch of other reasons you can consider like scaling. You can consider like Reliability, and reliability, of course, bunch of factors like whether it's highly available, of course, different availability zones you can set up. You do have features for DRs, fault tolerance, and of course, because Azure is one of the biggest cloud platform, it has most number of data centers any among any other cloud providers. So it has a real big global reach, and hence you can also get a benefit around good number of like replication. So you can replicate your application and data pretty much in most places in the world. So there is again an advantage about in general is an advantage of cloud, but of course we'll be talking more on Azure, so I'm just touching upon that as well. As I said about global replication, global reach. So of course you have more regions, you can replicate the data closer to the user. That is essential actually. We'll talk more on that. Why is it important? And performance, because they have they are kind of since they are reaching closer to the user, the latency of like user versus application is hosted is reduced. So that also kind of can be that advantage can also be taken. Okay, this screenshot you might have seen a lot, but the new thing, new instance you can find, it is serverless here, right side second option. So if you could just kind of watch out how this cloud computing has evolved over the last 10 years. So of course, IaaS came first, and it's not a surprise that AWS came first in the market with IaaS offering. Later, Azure jumped in. They started with PaaS initially, but later they also came into IaaS. Serverless, after the serverless started coming in, it is more of a, you can say, a specialized implementation of PaaS. It is a PaaS, but specialized implementation. So it's like even more, you don't need to even configure for scaling. So it takes care of scaling. So you just need to kind of use it and move on. So like event driven, right? Those kind of model. SaaS, of course, we know that it's like just need to configure a few things and you're done. So moving on. This also maybe some of you may be aware that when we talk about cloud computing, these are some of the things that we should be aware of. Public cloud like Azure uses mostly rented hardware, so they're not that costly. But of course, still businesses and companies are a little bit sensitive on keeping the like IP address or sensitive data on public cloud, so they prefer private cloud on those cases. And there's one more category called hybrid. So it is a mix of both, like you can say mix or you can say goodness of both. So you can use services that are not that sensitive into public cloud, and services which you care most and you think that you should handle yourself rather instead of some other vendor is handling. So you can keep those on private cloud. This is multi-cloud is a not too late kind of recent phenomenon that came in maybe last 2-3 years, and now it is even going more. With more and more cloud players coming in market, it is even getting more momentum in terms of whether you can use a capability of cloud A and also the B capability of cloud B. So mix of like, or you can say goodness of both cloud providers. So if we talk about, I have seen people using some of the AI capability of Google Cloud and some of the capability of even AWS and like web, and if they're coming from Microsoft background, they prefer to use application related services from Azure. So though any cloud provider may provide most of the services, but if you want to kind of evaluate that, okay, which service in which cloud vendor is more fit for you, you can go for it. Of course, it comes with complexity also, because you need to establish a connection it's not so straightforward. So it comes up with additional architectural complexity and in some cases even a hardware complexity. But it depends on the use case that what is more important for you, whether the benefits, right, the kind of trade-off, whether taking the advantage of additional cloud vendor is important for you, or you want to kind of get the cost of making it enable is like more kind of playing more role. So you need to choose like whether to go for whether we can continue to use services of the same cloud provider versus using multiple. So let's move on. Okay, so I think Mohit have covered pretty much on these services, so I'm not going to go on detail. Just a high level that these are some of the common services. They are the only ones. There are a bunch of other services that Azure has. These are some of the most commonly used services, right? We'll talk more on compute now. Okay, so again, compute also has many other, at least several other, if not many, that kind of recently, some of them recently came in. Some are like extended services of the main service like that. So we have taken the most commonly used here to talk about more and also to understand like what makes sense, like which service makes sense where. So this is basically I just taken this screenshot from the portal itself. So this is how they look when you go to. We'll also have a demo when we look into like these compute options. So virtual machine is the most traditional option, by the way, guys. In compute world, it is a most like earliest option that was available, and this is still a good option. If you want more control here, so it is like if you're looking for more control on your application or setup. Of course, we'll talk more on this, like what is the use cases, but at a high level, it gives you more control, but also more control also comes with more responsibility. So that is a aspect we need to consider. Azure Container Instance and Azure Kubernetes, these two guys are part of the same family called containerization, though they have like difference in terms of scaling up and capabilities and workload. If these things are more, the recommendation is to use AKS, Kubernetes service. But if it's like straightforward scenario, at the same time you want to utilize the power of container or benefits of containers, ACI is something that is also given that we can use. Azure Functions, it is an offering for that we were looking in the earlier screenshot about serverless. So it is coming from there. Of course, apart from functions, we also have something called Logic App. On some scenario that is more long running and orchestration kind of scenario where you have this different business process. But yeah, this is something we have taken that is most commonly used. So these are four primary things that we'll talk more as we progress. So let's consider the first one, virtual machine, right? So they said it is the most traditional one that is there in the lot. And let's talk about from the scenario when you really want to go with VMs, right? So I was talking that it gives you more control, like most control among other options that you have, because like machine itself, it's not physical one, it's a virtual one, but still you have options to kind of, it's like a machine, real machine actually you're getting in cloud. So you can do pretty much everything that you may do in your own laptop or your own desktop, right? Exception is that, of course, it's a virtualized environment. So this is something that when you, some of the use cases could be that, okay, you want to try out different apps, how they work in different OS. Sometimes there is a requirement that we're developing some applications and we want to test that, hey, how it is working in Windows versus Linux versus Mac. So you can spin up different VMs in the cloud, in the Azure in this case, and test it out. So you don't need to, of course, you can spin them, you can test it, and you can deallocate them. So you don't need to pay for entire duration. So it's like testing and developing app on different OS. So that is something we're talking about. That you have flexibility to like plug and play. You just deploy and keep spinning up different OSs the way you want to test, and don't to worry too much on the cost side, because it will be you just need to pay for the time you will be using that. Custom softwares, again, there are some specialized software you are developing, and of course you deploying into. across different OSs. So, in that case also you need to deploy in multiple machines with different operating systems. So that is other use case. And of course, see, PaaS, platform as a service, will not give you many options to configure the hosting environment, right? Though earlier there was some offering called cloud services that is no more recommended by Microsoft, where we had a worker role and web role kind of stuff. Then you could even see some of the VMs thing. You can say it was sitting between VM and nowadays we have app service. But the cloud service is not being recommended of late because Microsoft came up with a bunch of new services. So the idea is that app service may not give you, that is a pure PaaS offering, may not give you many configuration hosting options, like you can play around with IaaS setting. But in case of IaaS or VM, you get pretty much everything because it's a pure like it's a machine literally, and you can configure the IaaS, and you can play around with different like like different settings in the IaaS that otherwise PaaS service will not give you. If you have any application that requires custom setting in the deployment, right? Deployment environment. One more use case you can think about is that, see, your VMs are basically the most commonly, when you have a workload, we are deploying some application into the VMs, right? VM also has something called VM scale sets. So suppose you're deploying some application in VM, if you want to take advantage of, like, there's something called scale up and scale out. So scale out scenario is pretty common for VM. So there is some load balancer scenario, and of course there are some VMs behind the load balancer. And suppose one machine got down, you can spin up more. That is one. If you want more computing power, of course you can set them into the VM scale sets. It will give you more computing power. So that's how you can extend your data center we're talking about. So that is some of the typical scenario one may want to go with Azure VM. Okay, let's talk about container instance. In short, we call it ACI. So I was saying that ACI and AKS both are coming from a similar family called containerization. That's pretty common or popular nowadays, especially in microservice architecture. Of course, basically ACI is a lighter version, you can say, at a high level, that it is a lighter version of the AKS. AKS provides more complex scenario, more complex orchestration, basically, but ACI is for a lighter load. It is not meant for a heavy load thing. For heavy load is still for cluster environment, for Kubernetes, like cluster kind of containers, you still would like to go with the AKS, not with ACI. ACI is a lighter version of it. Of course, it is lighter, so it is fast, it is simple, and you don't need to have a setting like complexity of AKS. Sometimes I have like heard people saying that AKS that is good, but for simple scenario, for not too complex scenario, it gives way too many options to configure, and sometimes it looks like it is not so. It takes time to kind of set it up and manage. So ACI is something that addresses that thing, that if you don't have too complex scenario and too many complex applications, so you can prefer to also go with ACI, right? It is a PaaS offering, as you were seeing that this VM says IaaS offering, so this is a PaaS performance service offering. Okay. Now Kubernetes. So Kubernetes, as you were saying, that if you need a large number of containers, right? Your application may have, like, you need different containers for database, API layer, front end. It is a real enterprise application kind of, and you want more control on spinning different basically images into that containers and manage them, like spin up new one, keep monitoring the different basically images into the container. So all those scenario, and also automation you want to establish, right? So those kind of scenarios, And of course, when we talk about microservice architecture, we typically wants to have any service sitting on a container. So that's what this microservice is kind of at a high level. We try to complement with containers so that we have more control in terms of not waiting for other services to be present when you want to scale up. Okay, so suppose I have 2 3 services. Maybe let's take an example of e-commerce site. So maybe I may host you can say payment service into container A. I may host basket service in container B, and I may host catalog that comes initially into maybe container number 3. So these 3 can be the different images, right? Uh, Again, in API side, I may do something similar or different based on the load of the application, how many users are going to be using that. And of course, I may have, again, more than one containers for if it is a NoSQL scenario, I may go for Cosmos or Mongo, and if it is relational, I may go for MySQL or SQL Azure, right? So what I'm trying to say that applications which are complex in nature, AKS is the right platform for containers, container deployment. If it is a simple one, it is not too complex, ACI can be used. Okay. We were talking about functions at a high level, so let's talk a little more on that. It is coming from serverless side of the Azure computing or the Azure computing platform. It gives you kind of a event-driven feel. So you, of course, now we also have durable functions that is not here, but I'm just trying to bring in so that you understand it. We do have a durable functions that also use for stateful kind of scenario, but they are like, you can say, specialized kind of functions, and they're kind of rare scenario when you might want to use a stateful kind of functions. But in general, by default, Azure functions are meant for, you call it, you have some logic sitting in functions, you make a call from your service, you get a result. It's like that. So it's like event driven, right? You're calling, you can assume that as any other functions that, see, the name is also, Microsoft brought this function name just to keep a good analogy with the real deployment, right? We all write some code, some in functions, sometimes we also call it methods. So what we do, we have some code sitting in, we pass some parameters, and we expect some result, right? So that's how Azure Functions also works. Of course, it has different, we call it triggers, means how it should be called. Whether it should be called with HTTP, some API call is coming, it should do some calculation and return it. Whether it can be timer function, whether I want to set it up that, hey, you please keep running and please run maybe X hours in Y in a day in a week, like that. Any of that scenario. There are a bunch of other functions also that can be used. Okay. I was saying about logic apps. It is again a serverless compute options that is out there, and it is for orchestration scenario. Now, the main thing, you heard of it. Now you may be wondering that, okay, fair enough. Can I get more information on when to use what? So here, not just the thing that we talked about. Here you will see more options, basically. More options, more compute options. As I was saying, that there are several other options also available that we may not be able to cover in this session. But for the sake of knowledge, we can talk about here. Okay, so let's begin this thing, and it's an interesting flow. Actually, it gives pretty decent look on some of these options. So think about it. You want to migrate any application or building new. There is some old application and you want to migrate, or you want to write something from afresh, from scratch. So that is the first question, right? If it is building new, you want full control. Remember we were talking about control when we were discussing about VMs. So VMs comes when you want full control. You want a pakka machine actually that you want to play around with. You don't want any abstraction on that, right? Then VMs is a preferred option, right? Uh, we don't want control, like you don't want that much control. Rather, you want this lesser control, and you want a HPC. What is HPC here? High power computing. Means you want more computing power, right? In that case, Azure Batch is also one service that is out there in compute now. It provides you like complex scenario when you want huge computing power, like you want a bunch of VMs sitting for you and they're performing high computing jobs. So Azure Batch is a service again, is part of the compute platform. So in case of like performance compute, high Azure Batch is a way to go. Okay, if there is a case, if that is not the case, then if your application that you're writing, we are only building new application, by the way, right? If you look at from right side top, if it is a microservice architecture, means you want to have a different services in a microservice setup. You want domain-based bunch of services for you in API side. If it is the case, keep moving. If not, if it is just a monolith service, you may go with app service. App service is meant like it is not kind of it will do the job for you. You can have maybe a couple of app service and you're good. But if you're really looking for microservice, keep moving, because when we talk microservice, we typically complement that with a container. So keep moving. Again, in your moving, do you need a workload where you want event-driven kind of thing? Like if there is some call and there is something happens for short-lived, like you call something and you expecting a quick result, then yes, go for functions. That's what we discussed before some time, that it is like make a call and get a result. It is not meant for a huge like long running kind of processes, right? If yes, go for Azure function. If no, keep moving. Remember we talked about container instance and AKS before some time. So again, this question came: do you need full-fledged orchestration? Keep moving. If not, if you want a decent one, go for container instance. It will provide you a basic container features that should be good enough for a non-complex scenarios, straightforward scenarios. If it is a basically complex scenarios, like full complex scenario means you want like complex features of orchestrations, and you have many clusters and you want management of those clusters also. Then of course you have two options. One is Fabric. It is there from quite some time, but guys, I'll be honest, not many people are using Fabric, though it may sound like that I'm a Microsoft tech guys and lover, but in reality, AKS is getting used more. The reason is that it gives you more like options to today you are in Windows, tomorrow you can also deploy in Linux and Mac, right? Whether at the same time, if it is a Fabric, it is meant for typically for Windows. So again, if you're not thinking for platform kind of like cross-platform kind of scenario, then of course you can go with Fabric. However, in most cases, what I've seen that people look for something that feature ready, right? So they may not just stick for one platform. In that case, AKS is a go-getter. Okay. So these are the options for when we want to build something new. Let's now consider about we have some application already and we want to migrate it. That is a very common scenario, guys. By the way, not many companies have, or in India at least, what I know is that very few companies have applications which are getting written from scratch, right? Mostly starters, but the big companies with lakhs of employees, they basically mostly kind of go for some kind of migration, because they take multi-million project for many years, and that's what the typical this dollars comes from for their survival and to feed the lakhs of employees they have. So migration is what I'm trying to say, that migration is something that is pretty common phenomena in the industry, and let's talk about that. Again, lift and shift, right? In case you guys don't know what is lift and shift, it is a cloud, you can say cloud migration approach. So one is left and shift, other is cloud migrate, like upgrade. You're literally rewriting everything. It's like rewrite, you can say. So lift and shift is what? Lift and shift is something that you have something already working in local machines or local servers. You want to move them into the cloud. You can say like VMs or any other way. So you don't want to change the code, rather you just want to lift and shift, literally the same meaning, like lift from here and shift into cloud. What benefit you will get? You will benefit like that somebody else is managing your hardware. It is no more your hardware, right? So at least hardware scalability you will get. There is some advantage at least than managing everything from yourself. Of course, you will not be able to get the cloud native advantage, means you will not be able to get the other capabilities of cloud or other features of cloud. That generally comes in cloud native, because cloud native is application that is designed for cloud, means that is typically people loosely say that is a microservice application, because it will be able to use the real benefits of the cloud. So if it is let's back to the conversation. So if it is a lift and shift, keep moving. If it is you want the, no, it's not lift shift, you want to rewrite it, means you are basically saying it's a cloud optimized and cloud ready, like cloud native kind of application. Then you again come back to the where we were starting here, like it's PC and microservices, right? You go with all kind of chain. If it is lift and shift, again, one more question may come on that whether you can containerize, at least whether you can put different, suppose that is a monolith, maybe you may have some, basically, let's say you have a, I'm talking about a traditional one, so you may have MVC UI, you may have a maybe WCF service, or maybe SQL Server software, right? SQL Server. So if you want to keep these three into different containers, is it a possibility? Then if it is a possibility, then check it out. You can you can choose between based on the complexity of the application, you can choose between ACI and ACI or AKS. If it can't be containerized, it is written very I would say, in the lack of good words, badly. It is not properly designed or loose coupled. Then of course you have you have two options again between app service and VMs. So VMs, of course, when you want again kind of because VM is a machine, you can pretty much solve everything. It doesn't require .NET literally. So all kind of applications, it could be Windows, it could be anything, right? So choose VM. But if it is it is part of this list that comes into app service, like it is a web API, it is web applications, right? You can go with app service. So it is a typical, you can say, it is a good decision making kind of a chart that can help. Of course, the chart can keep, I borrowed this chart from Microsoft site, so it is an official one, so you can trust this. They keep updating this basically based on any new service that may come up. So currently we have Azure Batch. As and when any new service can come, or they want to retire any service, they keep updating. So I'll share the references in a while. You can go through, you can keep checking it as and when you there is some new service will come. They update the documentation. Okay. Fine. Let's look into the demo quickly. How we can create something. So okay. Wait, I do have. I think I was. Okay. Yeah. So let's go to this Azure portal. So I'm again coming back here. Close this. So this is my personal account of Azure and the other services that I have already for a bunch of other POCs and stuff. So I'll show you something good here. So we were talking about compute, right? So let's see, there is compute. So all services, here we go. So remember we were talking about different cloud like Azure services. So compute, networking, storage. I think Mohit even was talking about web, mobile, bunch of things, right? Containers. So it also provides, by the way, AI and ML scenarios. So security, identity, pretty much everything, right? DevOps, even all kind of scenarios. So now we are interested currently on compute. So let's look into click on compute and see what comes. So we have 36 services, by the way, guys. There are way too many. However, of course, there could be some redundant in a way that you can use A versus B with very little difference or based on the load. Some are like very specific in nature, like disk and all. Alone disk may not work. You it's like specific scenarios, and some are like full-fledged one, right? Like VMs and the stuff. So I think we were reviewing VMs. We looked into ACI, container stance. We looked into what a Kubernetes service, and we also looked into Azure functions. So that is out here somewhere. Where's that? Here we go, function app, right? So the other some of the options that there are many options, but maybe to start with, you can look into the most commonly used, and as you progress, you will start exploring into other options, like to understand like whether they're making sense. Now we are talking about going ahead with VM. So okay, so I do have one VM for different purpose I already have. So I'll click on the create one. Okay, so I'll use this subscription. I don't want to play with my current resource group, so I'll create test VM source group. Let's see, it's available. Good. Okay. Now I want to give similar name, test VM. Okay, let's see if that's available. Oh yeah, good. Region Southeast Asia, fine. Anyway, I'm going to remove this, post this demo, just for how you can do. Availability options, leave it. Here, guys, here is a catch, right? That you were talking about. That remember I was talking about different OS you can use and test it out. So here you go. So as you can see, there are Windows, of course, bunch of Windows flavors. Windows 10, Windows Server. Ubuntu is a part of Linux family. Again, we do have Oracle Linux. We do have bunch of stuff, right? So basically, the other some of the VMs that you can use. So we'll try to get into the easier one for now. So let's see what is okay. Wait, let's take something. Let's take something from Windows 10. Okay. Yeah. Now, of course, these are the most commonly. We also have option to look into bunch of other images that may be used for specific purposes. Okay, as you can see, there are way too many. So okay, let's come back. So basically, they are the OS image, right? Just to understand. Now, okay, yeah, the default option you want to know how you want to evict it. Evict means how you want to take it back, like it's not being used. Why to keep paying the money? So these are some of the options. Size, like how much CPU we want, how much memory you want, and based on the size you will pay it, right? So I'll go for something for cheaper one because just for demo. So where is the cheapest one, guys? Let's look into. Okay. So there are different options. I don't want premium. I want, let's look into this family, general purpose. Okay. Looks like they changed this. They changed this option. Earlier it was different. So this dashboard got some changes. Okay, so I want, let's look into this one. Maybe this can help us. Okay, so I just want one. Yeah, it is free one, right? Yeah, so I want free one only. So Okay, so I want this one F1. So let's select this. Yeah, 2 gig document is good enough. Okay, so again, it will ask me what? It will ask me username and password. Okay, and it's pretty straightforward. You can understand what we need to fill here. Inbound port rule. Okay, so again, what is port here, guys? So port are something that how you want this VM to be accessible from other machines, right? Whether you want to allow it or not. So if you will not allow it, you can't really open it up from any. You can't do RDP basically. So like that, whether you want different other options as such is from like Unix machine, right? So like that you have options. So for all different ports you want to open it up for it to be available. So like that you can choose the way. I think you should have at least RDP one, because otherwise how this will be accessible, right? It will come isolated, right? So there should be something. This checkbox is there. Yeah, of course, you need to kind of have this license. Let's look at what are the options. So this is a basic one. Disk again you can choose based on the how much, like whether based on how it's like as much as you pay at the premium you will get, right? This theory works for pretty much everything, so it is no different. This VM is no different. So it's like, and of course you want to go with something that is minimum for your case. Why would you pay a huge price for something that is not required? So of course do a good judgment here, like what is your requirements, and for that requirement what is the most economical option available to save the cost. That is the key, right? You can choose the description also in case you want to make it data more secure, right? Coming to network, you can configure some network setting on this. VNet you can select, so it will work on that VNet. It will be more secure, right? Public IP is something that you want this to be available using IP address. It's like you can open up it up, and this IP. So like that you can give that option. You can also make it load balance, but in this case you need to add more VMs, and then you can schedule Azure load balancer. So it will be like the availability part will be more in that case. There are some bunch of other settings that you can do with security, auto shutdown, all those guest OS, all kind of additional advanced setting you can play around with. But for most common scenario, if it is just for testing purposes, you can just come to basics and you're good. Okay, so review and create is an option that is okay. So I have not selected all the options because I don't want to create it again. But I will wanted to brief you that how it sounds. So once you fill in these, I think these information I have not filled. So you can give your username that you will use when you do when you do RDP, right? That time you need to give your username. It's like machine name, password, of course, and once you go from this one, you can click on review and create. It will give you the settings that you have applied, and it will create. And once you create, in the time, let me show you how it looks like. So okay, let me go with what I already have. So let me show some VM that I already have. So I have this VM. So what is that? It is not a free one. It is a D2 one. I have some data over there. So it has public IP address. I can do, I can open that with browser as well. And yeah, so these are the options I have used. I don't have any load balancer for that because it's not something very important data I have. It just for some testing. So this pretty much, at a high level, guys, you can spin up VM. Okay, let's go back. So this is some of the references that I referred myself, and you can refer them to get bunch of additional details. It will help you. And here I would say thank you. If you have any questions, please shoot up. And if not, you can also chat me. You can basically either follow me or at least you can ping me, and we can chat and we can get anything sorted. addressed.
Prakash,
Yeah,
we have one query from
sure.
Prem. Yeah, Prem was
Yeah.
asking what are the considerations for versioning the Docker images.
Sorry, what was the question? Can
Uh,
you?
what are the considerations for having the Docker image versions? So I'll read out the comment. His
Okay.
comment was
Huh?
to Prakash. Please talk a bit about version control of container images.
Okay. So for version control, right? Okay. So you mean for APS, is it or API?
It's he's asking for a container images. Maybe I'm assuming it's for the Docker containers.
Okay. Yeah, could be. So for that, right, this AKS, so let's go, let me quickly show little bit. And by the way, who was the person? Sorry, I could not read it. I could read.
Here's
So
Prem, Prem
yeah,
Born Explorer.
so Prem, maybe in the some time we will not be able to go too detailed, but please have a let's kind of chat over to it, and we can connect, and I can provide you more details on that. So by the way, at a high level, what I can show you that here you can for container option, like we have two primary services, container instance, and also we have Azure Kubernetes service AKS, and this how you can get started, right? So there are a bunch of scenarios, including the version control, that those kind of thing can be kind of configured. So we can chat in detail offline. Any other question, Swami?
Oh, this was the only one question. So I
Yeah.
can I'll add couple of things. Correct, Saurabh and Prakash Sab, you guys can correct me if I'm making sense. So a couple of things you can do. Prem is every company has got their own versioning. So some companies they go by the build number. So while we are building it, we take the build number from the CI/CD pipeline and we prefix it. And some company will have a version file, and manually we will update the version file. Some companies they go and update the assembly .cs, and that's manually they do it. So there are different strategies.
Yeah.
So based on that you can pick up one of your strategies. Simplest thing is you can take this build number, concatenate that with the date time stamp. That means you know that when this version of this image has been built, like your build number prefixed with 23 1 2021 520. Now the 522 is the time with milliseconds. So every time the next time build runs, it will not be 522, it might be 523 or 524. So different strategies. Anything to add from
Exactly. Exactly.
Saurabh or Prakash?
Totally agree with you, Swami. So yeah, I think what you just said, and there are a bunch of kind of strategies and approaches are prevalent in the market. So depends on what is more preferred option, you can go ahead. The simplest option, as you said, Swami, can be what is a I can note down somewhere, or I can have in like renamed or configured with versions or date, like I did. So that way, and if you're using any repo, right, whether it's Azure DevOps or whether it's GitLab or GitHub, the bunch of CI/CD tools, right? That anyway gives you this control behind, out of the box. That what was different versions. You can label it. There you can play, like, it gives you good control on the versioning of the code and also the build.
Yeah, that's what I remember. We use it the build number colon the date time colon rev revision number. So that's the format which we use. So we know that what are the bits we are pushing to the production for that particular release. But again, that should come from the organizational perspective. But we can
Exactly, because it is really tied up to the organization policy, how they want to do a versioning and DevOps and all kind of stuff that goes with build release.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wonderful session, Prakash, and I welcome our next speaker, Saurav.
Thanks, thanks, Swami. Thanks, everyone. Signing off.
Thanks.
All the
Yes,
best.
Yes,
thank
Saurav.
you.
Thanks. Could you please share your screen, Saurav?
Yeah,
I'll add it to the stream so that you know.
yeah, yeah. Just a second. Okay, can you see the screen?
I have added. So let me pull myself out so that
Okay, so all can hear me. So today, my session is on the Django. So let's see what is Django. So Django is a open source web framework, and it is a free of cost available, and it's completely open source, which is written in the Python. And by using this, you can create your web application quickly. Yep. So why we should use Django? So there are lots of framework, of course. If you don't know Python, you can use .NET thing like C# and other thing. You can use Java, with the
Hello.
hello.
Yeah, sorry. Your video was stuck, so let me pull myself out.
Okay. Now it's clear.
Yes, clear.
Okay, so it is fully loaded with the different kind of libraries we have with the Django. So we can use those Django libraries. It is completely secure because Django provides lots of security packages which is available with that, which we can directly plug and play. It is scalable. So using Django, you can scale your web application quickly, and it's a versatile. So by using Django, you can create a any kind of application. Like you can create web API, you can create a web application, anything. So I'm not taking too much time here. I'm just going to create a application. All right, so I'm just starting a command prompt here and everything, because I'll not use any tool here. Like we have lots of IDE available for the Django for the Python, but I'll just use the web VS Code, and from the command prompt we will run the Django application. Okay, so let me go to the D drive here and CD POC. And let me create a folder here. So I'm creating by md command 2020 Okay, so this is the folder I have created, and I'm going inside this folder. Okay, now the first thing, whenever we start any project in the Python, we always create a virtual environment. Okay, so what is virtual environment? Actually, whenever we create a because whenever we download Python, we can it is downloaded at the global level. Okay, so whenever we install any packages, like there is a pip installer there, so an easy installer is there. So whenever we install any package, it installs globally. So what we do, if we are managing multiple Django project in the same laptop or same machine, what you can do, you can create a virtual environment, and all the packages you can install in the in a particular directory. Okay, so what now I'm going to do, so let me go inside this folder now first, and then we will create a virtual environment. Just a second. Okay, so I'm inside this. Now what I'll do, I'll just create a virtual environment. So by using this command, I'll create a virtual environment. So py-m ve and v. This is the command which you can use. And after this, you can provide your virtual environment name. So you can say my environment and something else, whatever the name you like, you can provide here. So the virtual environment will be created in this folder. So you will see here, it will take some time and it will create a virtual environment for us. So now virtual environment is created here, and every virtual environment whenever we create a virtual environment, there is a by default 3 folder created, and this is the include where we have the C kind of header files here. but the main folder is a script folder. So all the script folder means in the script folder we have only executable file available, so you can directly run these executable files from the command prompt. Okay, and the second thing is library. So in the side packages we have all the libraries available here. So now the next thing is, once we created this virtual environment, we have to download the Python Django framework. In this means we have to install we have to download all the libraries for the Django. Okay, so what I'm doing now, so there is already, see, because we have a script folder, and I told that we can directly run the script from here, but we can execute this, but before that we have here activate related things. So you have to activate the virtual environment. Okay, so what you have to do, first of all, you have to go in the my environment. Inside this we have a script, and you have to activate this environment. So once you activate this environment will be activated here, and if you want to deactivate it, so there's again one more file, so there's a deactivate. Okay, so what you can do, you can just say deactivate and it will be deactivated. Now you can see this is not here. So make sure whenever you create a virtual environment, please make sure you have to activate this environment and you will be inside it. Now you can use pip, and again I'm using this pip command because pip is available. Oh, sorry, just a second. Okay, so pip is available in the script folder. So what I can do now, I can install pip, install, and Django. Okay, so here's it. So it is collecting all the libraries online, and it will take some time. And once it will done, there will be some Django related executable file will be here. So we can wait here for a while, and let's see. Okay, so Django is installed successfully. Here you can see we have one more new executable command, executable file here. You can see one exe file here, which is Django admin. Means if we want to create a project for the Django, we have to use this file. Means this file we can run directly from here. Okay, so and here in the libraries you can see all the Django related libraries will be available here, which you can use in the project. We will see later. These all the libraries will be available in our project. Okay, so now the next thing is, once we have Django with us, what we can do, we can use Django admin. So Django admin, and now from the Django admin you can create a Django project. So we have to create a Django project. So you can use start project. Okay, before then I don't know what command I have to use. So what we can do, we can just say Django admin dash help, and here you can see there are lots of commands available. So first of all I'll use the Django start project command. So this will be the command which I'll use, and we can create after then, once the project is created, inside the project we can create a multiple application inside the project. So we'll create application after some time, but first of all we will create the project. Okay, so project is a kind of a website. In the website we can have multiple applications like login application, we can have admin application, and like any kind of application whichever you want to create, you can create with using start. Okay, so let me clear the screen. Let me use Django admin. Okay, so the next command is start project, and the project name which you want to create. So I'll just create a website here. So I'll provide Django admin start project, and here I have provided the project name here. Okay, so once I did this, what will happen? So in the current project, in the current directory, means I'm in this current directory. Okay, so in this directory you will get the website here. Okay, so now I need to go inside the website, and I can open this website and the Visual Studio Code. Okay, so till now we have simply created a Django application, and I'm not discussing any more here. We'll just directly run this application. So to run this application, but before going to run this application, you can see we have a couple of files here. Okay, so we have wsgi file, we have urls.py file, we have settings.py file. So the main thing is the main file which we will run, that is manage.py. So here's the main function. Well, Django don't have main function, but whenever we run any py and the file name,
Hello, Saurabh. Looks like Saurabh lost his connection. Hey, Prakash. Hey guys, just give a couple of minutes for Saurabh to rejoin. Looks like he lost his internet connection.
hello, Swami, I
Hi.
can't.
Oh, I
Hi.
was on mute. Could you please share your screen? I'll add
No,
the
no.
content.
How much I have completed means I was continue talking and I forgot. So
I remember you were talking about those py files under the main method.
okay, fine. So I'll
Yeah,
continue from there.
yeah,
Okay,
the
just
main method. That's what I heard last word.
all right. No,
Yeah.
okay, no problem. I'm sharing my screen just so you can.
So, add it to stream. I'm
Down.
jumping out.
Okay, fine. So I was talking about this main method. So whenever we run any file like py manage.py, and this file is the main file. So we are running this main file here, and so in the D, we have POC and this one. Okay. So inside the website, inside the environment, we have library, And I told you previously that there is a Django automatically installed, and these the libraries, all the libraries which we will use, which will be available here. So we are using Django.core.management. So I'm in the Django.core.management. So management is here, and from here all the commands are running. Okay. So the next thing is we have to run the application, and to run the application we will use py manage.py and run server. Okay. So when we run this application will run at this port, which is 8000, and we can directly run here. So you can see my application is already running here. Okay. Now what the next thing we have to do, so once we run the application, automatically you can see we have db.sqlite file available here. So it is automatically generated. Previously this file was not there, but it is automatically generated because somewhere the file name is written. Okay. So now by default lots of application is installed. There is admin portal is available. So already admin is here. We have authentication, we have content types, sessions. So by default all the application will is already available here. And whenever we will create any application, so I already told that when we created the project Django admin start project, on that time there was one more command, that is startup. So when we create any application from that startup, we can install here. Okay. There are a couple of middlewares which we'll discuss later. There's a main file which is URL. So all the URLs will be available here. Okay. So whenever we want to create a URL, we will discuss about this, how we will create a URLs, but all the URLs are available here. The next thing is in the settings.py. So this is the database which we are discussing. So when we run when we run first time this application, automatically in the base directory, and I already told you that the base directory means the main project folder. Okay. So this is the base directory, and where this file should be created. Okay. So we defined here. There are some authentication. Okay. So once we created the project, now I'm going to create one more file in the website folder, which is views.py. Okay. So here I'll define actually all the controller related stuff here. Okay. So let me add let me create a hello world kind of application here. So I'm going to create a hello world application here. So from Django dot http. So I'm just importing this. So I'm importing http response. Okay, so I just taken the http response from this library, and we are defining a method, that is welcome method.
Hey guys, good evening again. Looks like Saurabh lost the internet again, and he called me. He said that he lost the net, and I think we'll close this call now. We have a event on 6th, so please register for that. There are a couple of events which are coming in. I'll just flash it on my screen. So there is one event which is on 31st Jan. She's on Web API and Blazor. How can you create a Web API and integrate it with the Blazor WASM app and Azure API management and Signal R? So Renuka, Steven, and me, we are talking on this. And there's one event on Feb 6th on .NET and Azure Artificial Intelligence. Alagunila, Menaka, and Suhas, these folks are talking. So see you guys. Thanks so much for joining, and have a good rest of the weekend. Bye.